contributor and the man who killed Osama Bin Laden, Rob O'Neill.
That Rob O'Neill was not the guy who shot Osama Bin Laden.
Rob O'Neill, a decorated special operations soldier who fired the shots that killed Bin Laden.
That they do not believe that Robert O'Neill is correct, that he was not the person who fired the fatal shot at Osama Bin Laden.
He would have died had he not been shot by Mr. O'Neill.
Bunch of tours in Iraq, and then I was on the team that killed Bin Laden. I actually killed him.
It was 100% not Rob O'Neill.
And like even now, people say, "Well, you shot Bin Laden." I mean, people say you did, and I'm like, I wish I did.
But
Sure.
Keith was number 3 in the stack. Rob was number 4. Bissonnette was number 2, and
Okay.
they all shot him.
Rob O'Neill, for me, is kind of a beacon of truth.
Who's the dude who shot Bin Laden?
Rob O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill.
Well, if you're just hating, then take it somewhere else. There's a point where you just got to stop caring. And I don't care. And if Antihero, I don't care. I responded to them just because it was like amusing.
We're being sued by Rob O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill hit me with a $25 million defamation lawsuit.
Rob O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill. Rob O'Neill.
Robert O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill.
Well, if you have nothing to hide, then why are you worried?
In the last few months of 2025, I feel like everyone had forgotten about the Antihero Podcast episode from 2023, where they called out Rob O'Neill for allegedly lying about his role in the Osama Bin Laden raid. Well, on November 10th of last year, Rob would make headlines once again, this time for launching a lawsuit against Brent Tucker, a former Antihero member who is now the host of the Tier 1 Podcast YouTube channel, Tyler Hoover, one of the original hosts who is still the owner of the Antihero Podcast, and Jimmy Arnett, who is a host on the Counterculture Podcast. In the lawsuit, Rob claims that their false statements and the harassment have cost him business and negatively affected the public's perception of him. With this lawsuit coming so long after the initial accusations, it has reopened the public's interest in what happened that fateful night in Abbottabad, Pakistan. As we start 2026, it's strange to think that an event from 14 years ago is still a point of contention amongst veterans and historians. It made me wonder if there's more to this story than what meets the eye, and what we could find if we look past all the flashy titles about lawsuits and stolen valor. So in this video, I hope to provide as much clarity and context as possible about Rob O'Neill and his allegations and controversies that seem to divide the military community and its supporters. After hundreds of videos, books, news articles, and more, I realized that there needs to be an account for such a historic story going so wrong. This story was very challenging to put together. There will be topics that you might wonder what the relevance is, but in order to understand the controversy around the Bin Laden raid and why the lawsuit has been so criticized, there are a lot of points to cover. But bear with me till the end. As always, there'll be chapters in the description below to help you navigate through the video. But without further ado, this is a summary of the controversy surrounding Rob O'Neill and his role in the legendary mission Neptune spear that ended Osama Bin Laden. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, everyone can agree that Rob had a legendary career that very few can rival. Here's a very brief summary. Rob joined the Navy in 1996. He completed his basic training in A school before going to BUDS, aka Navy SEAL selection. Rob would succeed and go to SEAL Team 2 until 2001. He would then go to SEAL Team 4 for 3 years before trying out and ultimately making the cut to join one of the 2 most exclusive and potent military units in the world, SEAL Team 6 in 2004. He would spend 8 years there before retiring in 2012 after almost 17 years of service. During Rob's career, he would participate in an estimated 400 combat missions. Some of the most notable were the rescue Marcus Luttrell, which was the inspiration for the movie Lone Survivor. He was one of the SEALs that was on the ship when the SEAL snipers rescued Captain Phillips, but he is most known for being one of the team leaders that was on the legendary mission that ended Osama Bin Laden. 3 years after the raid, Rob came out publicly as the one that took the shots that eliminated UBL. During his career in the Navy, he was awarded 2 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze Stars of Valor, 1 Joint Commendation Medal of Valor, 2 Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medals with Valor, and 3 presidential unit citations. After the military, Rob went down the entrepreneurial route, creating the Special Operations Veteran Career Transition Company, Your Grateful Nation, which is now called Special Operators Transition Foundation. He is a public speaker that talks about his experiences in the military, leadership, and the importance of effective communication. Rob has started clothing and merchandise companies called RJO Apparel and the Operator Collection. He also has a regular podcast called The Operator on the Drake and Bros YouTube channel. Most importantly, he is a New York Times best-selling author. His first book was The Operator, published in 2017, where he shared his early life and career in the Navy. His second book, The Way Forward, was released in 2021 with his co-author, Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer. With Rob's accomplishments in the Navy and his success as an entrepreneur, he is by far one of the most successful veterans of this generation. There are hundreds of videos out there about Rob and his role during the Osama Bin Laden raid. He has had a very successful speaking career where he has shared this story. And for the most part throughout the years, the stories remained pretty consistent. After watching every video I could find of him being interviewed, I was honestly a little shocked at how consistent he has told his life story and the events that transpired on that mission. In fact, it was so consistent that you can interchange videos from the last decade to tell the story from his point of view.
No, just based on, like I said, we were prepared for whatever, and one of our plans were if we land on the north side, we're going to this northeast gate. So we went to that gate, we put a bomb on it and blew it up. And it opened like a tin can into a brick wall. It was a fake door. It's like, this is happening. And even the breacher was like, this is bad. And I'm like, no, this is good. That's a fake door. He's here. So then we said, we're going to just hit that door with another charge. We thought the first helicopter said dash one going around, dash one going around. But I think they were saying dash one going down. Right. And they said, don't blow it, we'll open it. And the door opened and the thumb came out with a glove. I recognized it. And that now we're at a point in life where it doesn't matter why you're here, you just are. And this is one of them. I don't need to know how you got there, man. You're just there. Somehow my guys are in this compound. And when I talk to like pro football teams and give them a talk, it doesn't matter why it's 2nd and 15. It just is. Stop bickering. What are we going to do now? The clock is ticking.
What's the goal?
So this one is like, I don't know how they got in there. It doesn't fucking matter. They're in there. So we go in. There's a gunfight going on. And one of my guys actually shot one of the couriers, I think Al-Kuwaiti, and his wife jumped. He killed her too. So I'm getting ready to get in the fight. I get in the house and I'm watching my guys. Because of where we landed, I have a front row seat to the greatest mission in modern history. So I'm watching my guys work. Like I'm on a long hallway, and one of the basic rules of a gunfight is if there's a gunfight, get out of the hallway. Bullets come down the hall. Yeah. So I step in this room and I'm watching my guys, and they're doing their shit. So these guys are working the problem, and the woman, Maya, we'll call her that, said, I don't know where it is, but you're gonna run into a stairwell. And when you find that stairwell, you will run into Khalid bin Laden. He lives on the 2nd floor. And she was so badass. She said, here's the way she put it. If you can ace him, you get a shot at the big guy. And that's a cool brief right there from a badass, you know. We get there, sure enough, he's there, and he spins around this thing. He's on a banister on these stairs, and we're still quiet. I'm like 8 dudes back, but I'm gonna watch. Like I normally should take guys back, especially fighting up in an urban environment. I want to grab a few dudes and bring them out of the fight because he chucks a grenade, you know, limit the thing. But I'm like, you know, this is historic, and I'm gonna die today anyway, so I gotta watch. So I'm just standing there, and it's dark, and the guy, he said, Khalid, Irfai Dek, Khalid, Delta Russia. And that confused Khalid, so Khalid leaned his head over to ask what? One of our guys shot him, then we go back up the stairs, and we're split off on the 2nd floor, and then now we're down to one last set of stairs. There's one guy in front of me, and it's me and him. And he's looking up the stairs, and there's a curtain. She'd already taken a shot. And the way that it works is the number 1 guy is pointing, the number 2 guy has to control him, and I'm looking for other dudes. Like I want 4 more guys, because we're gonna go up that set of stairs, Bin Laden's right there. And when I squeeze you, it means we're ready to go. So I want 4 dudes. I'll take 2, I want 4. But he's up there, he already shot. So I'm looking around, I'm like, we got nothing, and then, now we don't talk at all. And the point man starts talking to me. He's like, we gotta go, come on, we gotta go. Because he'd seen people moving, he's assuming those are the suicide bombers. Yep, they're the suicide bombers. We got to go, and he moved moved that curtain and then jumped on what he thought were suicide bombers. And that's a Medal of Honor move as far as I'm concerned. He still doesn't have one. He should get one, even if he's staying quiet. And because he went left, I went right, and that's when I saw Osama bin Laden standing up, taller than I thought. He was skinnier than I thought. He had his hands on his wife Amal's shoulder, sort of almost pushing her toward me. So I blasted him. I moved him again. I grabbed Amal, his wife. I just saw him, shot him, and moved her and shot him again. And then I have to move her out of the way because I know other SEALs are going to come in, and I don't want to hurt them. Then I moved the wife and put her on the bed. His 2-year-old son was standing there, and I remember as a father thinking, this poor kid's got nothing to do with this. And I moved him, and that's when it started to sink in, and other SEALs are coming in. And I'm kind of standing there, and one of my buddies came up, and he goes, are you good? And I said, what do we do now? And he said, now we go find the computers, remember? And I said, yeah, I'm back. Holy shit. And he goes, yeah, you just killed Bin Laden, man. Your life just changed. So
I saw this comment on one of his videos that was pretty accurate with my feelings going over the hundreds of hours of footage. Rob reminds me of when I was going on a bunch of job interviews one after another. There got to a point where I knew exactly what I wanted to say, what my stock responses were, and exactly what the interviewer wanted to hear. He's definitely got a story nailed down at this point. The downside is that if you've seen him giving another speech or seen him in a podcast, you already know every item on the checklist. Now, giving speeches in front of large groups of people can be very intimidating. Also, when someone is telling a story from over a decade ago, it's safe to assume that there will be a slip up here and there, or they misspeak. There were some stories in general sounded like a big fish type of tale, and some stories sometimes that had more detail at certain points than others. For the most part, to understand this controversy, I don't believe these points are super important. For example, sometimes he says that he called Admiral McRaven by his first name, or sometimes he shares that the point man on the final staircase said, "These bitches are getting truculent." For insignificant details such as those, we won't do an autopsy on the back and forth, since it's irrelevant to the more important facts about the UBL raid and the subsequent lawsuit. However, there have been moments where details have changed, been contradicted, or pieces have been added. Since we have over a decade of information to go over, and there's a lot of important people to this story, I thought it'd be best to go in a chronological timeline of events. We will need to skip around a little bit, so bear with me. Again, there'll be timestamps in the description below for major events and specific years that we'll be looking at. And if anything in the video gets deleted for any reason, I'll make sure to annotate in the pinned comment for context. On May 1st or 2nd, depending on your place in the world, President Obama announced that Osama Bin Laden had been eliminated to the world. Following the press conference, media outlets were in a flurry to find out what information they could to share with their audiences. Before we present some of the articles from that timeline, I do think it's important to note that I'm sure there is a lot of misinformation and assumptions being made at that time, since all the big media outlets are trying to get the first big scoop to present to their audiences. The first piece of information we'll look at is a press briefing by Jay Carney and John Brennan from the White House on May 2nd, 2011. The first part that we'll note is that the White House believed that UBL was engaged in a firefight, and that's how he was eliminated.
Discussed that extensively in a number of meetings in the White House and with the president. The concern was that bin Laden would oppose any type of capture operation. Indeed, he did. It was a firefight. He therefore was killed in that firefight, and that's when the remains were removed. But we certainly were planning for the possibility.
Jeff, you said that Osama bin Laden was actually involved in the firefight, and it has been reported that he reached for a weapon. Did he get his hand on a gun, and did he fire himself?
He was engaged in a firefight with those that entered the area of the house that he was in, and whether or not he got off any rounds, I quite frankly don't know.
The next point is that they report that his wife was used as a human shield and that they believe that she was also eliminated as a result.
I'd circle back to a point you just made. Bin Laden used women as human shields when American personnel went in?
There was family at that compound, and there was a female who was in fact in the line of fire that reportedly was used as a shield to shield bin Laden from the incoming fire. I'm sorry, Carrie, go ahead.
How many civilian casualties were there?
Bin Laden died. The two Al-Qaeda facilitators, there's the brothers who were the courier and his brother in the compound, bin Laden's son Khalid, and the woman presumed to be his wife who was shielding bin Laden.
Thank you, sir. I just want to end with Jake had a follow on it. I just want to clear something up because I think a few of us were confused. The woman that was killed was bin Laden's wife?
It's my understanding.
And he was using her as a shield?
She served as a shield. Again, this is my understanding, and we're still getting the reports of exactly what happened at particular moments. That when she fought back, when there was the opportunity to get to bin Laden, she was positioned in a way that indicated that she was being used as a shield, whether or not bin Laden or the son or whatever put her there or she put herself there. Yes, that's again my understanding, that she met her demise, and my understanding is that she was one of bin Laden's wives.
How many other people in that compound?
A few hours later, Creme.com would put out an article about the raid. It looks like the article was deleted in 2021, but it's still accessible through the Wayback Machine. In the article, it talks about bin Laden firing at the SEALs, but it also talks about the SEALs fast roping out Chinook helicopters at one point into the compound. but another section talks about Blackhawks. With what we know about the raid years later, we can see glaring inaccuracies from early reporting from the raid. Politico would publish a story about the raid late that night on May 2nd with some clarifying points. However, during a background off-camera briefing for television reporters later Monday, a senior White House official said Bin Laden was not armed when he was killed, apparently by the U.S. raid team. At the Monday evening briefing for TV reporters, a senior official also corrected what Brennan described earlier as my understanding, that the woman who acted as a shield for Bin Laden was one of his wives was killed. A different guy's wife was killed. A different official familiar with the briefing for TV reporters said Monday night, Bin Laden's wife was injured but not killed, the official said. Another official familiar with the operation said it did not appear that any woman was used as a human shield, but that the woman killed and the one injured were hurt in the crossfire. The official said he believed Brennan had mixed up the episodes involving Bin Laden's wife with another encounter elsewhere in the compound. The next day on May 3rd, the Chicago Sun-Times had published their article echoing the clarification points of the wife as a human shield narrative. Also, it would provide some insight into what happened to his wife. Washington. Osama Bin Laden was not armed during the raid by U.S. forces where he was shot and killed. A woman was not exactly used as a human shield to protect him, and his wife was not killed Sunday, White House officials said, correcting the record. In the room with Bin Laden, a woman, Bin Laden's wife, rushed the U.S. assaulter and was shot in the leg but not killed. Bin Laden was then shot and killed. He was not armed, the Defense Department narrative stated. The Guardian would also post a story that Bin Laden was not armed and did not use a woman as a human shield. On May 6, a few days after the raid, NBC News would post a story where reports stated that Bin Laden's wife attacked the SEALs and they shot her in the leg, then took out UBL.
Piecing together the life of one of those wives, Amal al-Sada, says she was just 18 when she was married to Osama bin Laden, then 43, becoming his last and favorite wife. After more than 10 years of marriage, Amal was known to be devoted to him, and when U.S. Special Forces stormed the compound, she lunged forward, seemingly to protect Osama. The Americans pushed her aside, shot her in the leg. She was in the room when her husband died.
A few months later, the New Yorker would post a story by Nicholas Schmidl about the raid. This was the first and most comprehensive story I could find before the mainstream depictions would subsequently come out. The author was very informed about the operation. He knew about the dog Cairo, knew how the CIA was able to find Bin Laden and the events of Neptune's spear. From being able to identify those Navy SEAL DEVGRU members and Night Stalkers, to the agency following Abu Ahmed in his SUV to the compound, it seems like someone from the mission had spoken to the author to give such a detailed account from the planning to the execution of the mission. The first significant statement in the article that varies from accounts that we will analyze later is that the elimination of UBL's son, Khalid. After blasting through the gate with C4 charges, 3 SEALs marched up the stairs. Midway up, they saw Bin Laden's 23-year-old son Khalid craning his neck around the corner. He then appeared at the top of the staircase with an AK-47. Khalid, who wore a white t-shirt with an overstretched neckline and had short hair and a clipped beard, fired down at the Americans. The counterterrorism official claims that Khalid was unarmed, though still a threat worth taking seriously. You have an adult male, late at night, in the dark, coming down the stairs at you in an Al-Qaeda house. Your assumption is that you're encountering a hostile. At least 2 of the SEALs shot back and killed Khalid. According to booklets that the SEALs carried, up to 5 adult males were living in the compound. The next significant point is the actual confrontation of Bin Laden. In this section, the article talks about how 3 SEALs ascended the staircase and one of them took shots and missed. Then, when the SEALs entered the bedroom, they shot one of the wives in the leg and tackled him to the ground before the next SEAL eliminated the threat. A second SEAL stepped in the room and trained his laser on his M4 on Bin Laden's chest. The Al-Qaeda chief, who was wearing a tan shalwar and a prayer cap on his beard, froze. He was unarmed. There was never any question in detaining or capturing him. It wasn't a split-second decision. No one wanted detainees, the special operations officer told me. The administration maintains that had Bin Laden immediately surrendered, he could have been taken alive. 9 years, 7 months, and 20 days after September 11th, an American was a trigger pull from ending Bin Laden's life. The first round of .556 bullet struck Bin Laden in the chest. As he fell forward, the SEALs fired a second round in his head, just above his left eye. On his radio, he reported, "Forgotten country, Geronimo, Geronimo, Geronimo." After a pause, he added, "Geronimo, EKIA, enemy killed in action." The article seems very well researched and accurate for now what we know in retrospect. But those 2 main points will be very different when we analyze Rob's and other accounts of what happened that night. 2012 was a big year for the Bin Laden raid becoming popularized. One of the most important pieces of information that challenges Rob's narrative of the raid is the book No Easy Day, the autobiography of a Navy SEAL, the first-hand account of the mission that killed Osama, released on September 4th, 2012. The pen name of the author was Mark Owen, but is very commonly known to be Matt Bissonnette, a former SEAL Team 6 operator. It is 100% confirmed that he was one of the individuals that was on Neptune's Spear mission where Bin Laden was terminated. Matt's story in itself is bizarre, but we won't do it back and forth, and we'll just focus on what's important in context to Rob's story. One point I want to make clear before we continue, there were several books that are really important to the story to analyze, but I only read the chapters that are relevant to either the Neptune Spear mission or Rob O'Neill. In this chapter, and the one leading up to it, Matt has described the raid as currently number 2 in the group of SEALs heading up to the stairs of the 3rd floor where UBL is. The landing at the top of the stairs opened into a narrow hallway. At the end of the hall was a door to the balcony. Roughly 5 feet from the top of the stairs were 2 doors, one to the right and one to the left. The stairway is relatively narrow, especially for a bunch of guys in kit. It was difficult to see around the point man, since the stairwell and the landing narrowed as we got to the top. We were less than 5 steps from getting to the top when I heard suppressed shots. Bop, bop. The point man had seen a man peeking out the door on the right side of the hallway, about 10 feet in front of him. I couldn't tell from my position if the rounds hit the target or not. The man disappeared into the dark room. The point man reached the landing first and slowly moved towards the door. Unlike in the movies, we didn't bound up the final few steps and rushed into the room, guns blazing. We took our time. The point man kept his rifle trained into the room as we slowly crept towards the open door. Again, we didn't rush. Instead, we waited at the threshold and peered inside. We could see 2 women standing over a man laying at the foot of a bed. Both women wore long gowns, and their hair was a tangled mess like they had been sleeping. The women were hysterically crying and wailing in Arabic. The younger one looked up and saw us in the door. She yelled out in Arabic and rushed the point man. We were less than 5 feet apart. Swinging his gun to the side to the corner of the room, if either woman had a suicide vest, he probably saved our lives. But it would have cost him his own. It was a selfish decision made in a split second. With the woman out of the way, I entered the room with a 3rd SEAL. We saw the man laying on the floor at the foot of the bed. He was wearing a white sleeveless t-shirt, loose tan pants, and a tan tunic. The point man's shots had entered the right side of his head. Blood and brains spilled out on the side of his skull. In his death throes, he was still twitching and convulsing. Another assaulter and I trained our lasers on the chest and fired several rounds. The bullets tore into him, slamming his body into the floor until he was motionless. So the obvious takeaway from this chapter is that Bissonnette was number 2 in the stack, and that the point man took a shot at UBL from the stairwell landing. Then the team entered the room and found him laying at the foot of the bed dying before shooting him. In this chapter, Bissonnette talks about the process of verifying that it was UBL and how they exited the actual compound. One important detail that Bissonnette describes is his beard and what he found in the bathroom. The more I looked at his mangled face, my eyes seemed to go back to his nose. It wasn't damaged and seemed familiar. Pulling my booklet out of my kit, I studied the composite photos. His beard was dark black, and there was no trace of gray that I expected to see. I started to wipe the blood away from his face using a blanket from the bed. With each swipe, the face became more familiar. He looked younger than I expected. His beard was dark, like it had been dyed. I just kept thinking about he didn't look anything like I expected him to look. I stayed in the room and started gathering up intelligence I could find. The office was barren of anything useful. I grabbed a few papers, possibly religious writings, and took some audio cassettes and threw them into a mesh bag. We all carried lightweight collapsible bags for this purpose. A quick search of the tiny bathroom of green tile on the walls had revealed nothing of value. I did find a box of Just for Men hair dye, which he must have used on his beard. The prime takeaway from this chapter is that the beard was supposedly black with no trace of gray. On February 10, 2013, Esquire released an article called "The Man Who Killed Osama Bin Laden Is Screwed." The interview process for the article began in April, presumably of the previous year. We now know that the shooter the article refers to is Rob O'Neill. The important takeaways from this account are about the final moments of the raid. The point man moved past doors on the 2nd floor, and 4 or 5 guys in front of me started to peel off to clear those rooms, which is always how the flow works. We're just clearing as we go, watching our backs. They stepped over past Khalid, who was dead on the stairs. The point man at the time saw a guy on the 3rd floor, peeking around a curtain in front of the hallway. Bin Laden was the only adult male left to find. The point man took a shot, maybe 2, and the man upstairs disappeared into a room. I didn't see that because I was looking back. I don't think he hit him. He thinks he might have. So there's a point man on the stairs, waiting for someone to move into the number 2 position. Originally I was 5 or 6 man, but the train flowed off to clear the 2nd floor. The 2 of us went up. On the third floor, he tackled the two women in the hallway right outside the first door on the right, moving them past just enough. He thought he was going to absorb the blast of suicide vest. He was going to kill himself so I can get the shot. It was the most heroic thing I've ever seen. I rolled past him into the room just inside the doorway. There was Bin Laden standing there. He had his hands on a woman's shoulders, pushing her ahead, not exactly towards me, but by me, in the direction of the hallway commotion. It was his youngest wife, Amal. I'm just looking at him from right here. He moves his hand out of his face about 10 inches. He's got a gun on a shelf right there, the short AK he's famous for. And he's moving forward. I don't know if she's got a vest and she's being pushed to martyr them both. He's got a gun within reach. He's a threat. I need to get a headshot so he won't have the chance to clack himself off, blow himself up. In that second, I shot him 2 times in the forehead. Bap, bap. The second time as he's going down, he crumpled onto the floor in front of his bed. I hit him again. Bap. Same place. That time I used my EOTech red dot hollow sight. He was dead, not moving. His tongue was out. I watched him take his last breaths. Just a reflex breath. Before and after the story of the third floor, the article talks about Rob's life and other military stories and challenges that came from his career. But the important takeaway from Rob's first time sharing his perspective is that the point man took 1 or 2 shots at a male figure presumed to be UBL. A very interesting phrase from that was, I don't think he hit him, he thinks he might have. But the important part is that Rob asserts that he entered the bedroom alone and terminated UBL. Rob would talk about the article in an interview he did from the Battleline podcast in 2024.
You wrote, or
Yeah, I didn't even write an article. That was I was doing.
you were interviewed for one, right? For Esquire.
Yes, I did, and that was another one too, where they made me look like a whiny bitch because of the cover.
I remember
wanted
that.
to get,
Yes, where they said you
get,
said you didn't have health care or something, right?
I was making a point that if you don't retire, you don't get health care, and maybe we should look into that. Like, because a lot of these guys have been fighting. You know, I have 17 years, not 20, but can you give me 3 months for my kids to have health care before I get a job? I don't even know how to get a job out there. I'd rather go to combat than fill out an application for work.
2 weeks later, 60 Minutes would air an interview with Matt Bissonnette disguised as Mark Owen and go over the details about the raid. The first point of the interview is Bissonnette again sharing that he was number 2 man in the stack to the third floor and that the point man took shots at UBL before they entered the room.
Is stepping past Khalid, and now you're number 2 in the stack. You're right behind the point man.
Yep. I kind of try to look around him, hear him take a couple shots, kind of see a head, somebody disappear back into the room.
The point man had seen someone stick his head out a door and shot him just the way he'd shot Khalid.
Yep.
What did you do then?
Inside the room, I could see a body laying on the ground. Over him was 2 females, real close to the door. They looked up and saw the point man. He steps in to the room, literally rushes the 2 women, grabs one under each arm and pushes them back against the far wall. So if they did have a suicide vest on and they did blow themselves up, that wouldn't affect the rest of the guys.
Then he describes the scene when the SEALs in the stack enter the room following the figure that fell into the doorway.
You know, in my mind, he looked way younger than I thought he was going to be. His beard wasn't gray at all. You know, I'd studied lots of photos of him, and you know, they were always gray. His beard was dark black. Identifiably, he was very tall.
We'll come back to those points later. Rounding out 2013, Rob would create his company, Your Grateful Nation, now called Special Operators Transition Foundation. This nonprofit has helped numerous military personnel go from being service members to having a career in the private sector. The company is still active to this day. 2014 would be a big year for the story, since it's the year that Rob came out publicly as a SEAL that eliminated UBL. Before Rob would do this, the Navy made a formal statement about SEALs sharing their stories. On October 31st, 2014, Rear Admiral Brian Lousy, commander of Naval Special Warfare Center, and Force Master Chief Michael Magarasi would publish a memo condemning Matt and other SEALs. There's no hard evidence that they knew Rob was the author of the Esquire article or that he intended to come out publicly, but it's suspected that this memo is directed at those 2 SEALs. I won't read the whole memo here, but the third paragraph summarizes the gist of the memo very accurately. At Naval Special Warfare's core is a SEAL ethos. A critical tenet of our ethos is, I do not advertise the nature of my work, nor seek recognition for my actions. Our ethos is a lifelong commitment and obligation, both in and out of service. Violators of our ethos are neither teammates in good standing, nor teammates who represent Naval Special Warfare. At the end of the memo, it mentions how classified information is protected by law and makes it clear that there could be legal consequences for sharing inappropriate information. On November 6th of 2014, Rob was supposed to come out publicly as a SEAL that killed Bin Laden from an interview he did with the Washington Post. However, an editor for SelfRep.com would prematurely release his identity 3 days before the article had confirmed O'Neill was the shooter from the Esquire article from the year before. Immediately after Rob came out as the one who killed UBL, there were questions about the validity of his story. We can see from this clip from CNN on November 2nd, 2014, that other SEALs were supposedly in contact with the media to discredit Rob's story.
Brooke, what we can tell you is that sources in the special operations community have told our national security consultant, our national security contributor, Peter Bergen, that the gentleman named Robert O'Neill is claiming to have been the shooter, the man who killed Osama Bin Laden, who fired the fatal shot at Osama Bin Laden. Sources in the special operations community telling our Peter Bergen that Robert O'Neill is the former SEAL who now claims to be the shooter. Robert O'Neill also is saying that to the Washington Post, that he is the man who fired the fatal shot at Osama Bin Laden. But we also have to say that sources in SEAL Team 6, which was involved in the Bin Laden raid, of course, are also telling Peter Bergen that they do not believe that Robert O'Neill is correct, that he was not the person who fired the fatal shot at Osama Bin Laden. Those sources telling Peter Bergen, our national security analyst, that it was someone who they call the point man, who fired a shot down the hallway when Bin Laden peered his head out the door of his bedroom, that shot was the shot that killed Osama Bin Laden. So Robert O'Neill, now, according to sources in the special operations community, is the man claiming to be the shooter, according to our Peter Bergen, but the sources in SEAL Team 6, are telling Peter that his account is not correct, that he was not the person who fired the fatal shot at Osama Bin Laden.
At this point, Mark Owen's real name, Matt Bissonnette, was publicly known. However, to my knowledge, he hadn't done any interviews without a disguise. In an article posted on NBC News, Matt would refer to Rob by stating, "Two different people telling two different stories for two different reasons." Rob would go on to share that the reason he came out publicly is after attending an event at the 9/11 Memorial, after he donated some items in the raid and giving an impromptu speech to some of the victims' families. Aside from the Bissonnette story and that brief CNN video, there wasn't much more to find contradicting Rob in the mainstream. On the contrary, it seems like it launched him into immediate stardom.
Now, is the Navy SEAL responsible for Osama Bin Laden's death? Retired Navy SEAL Rob O'Neill. We have a studio audience here today. Cool. Great honor to meet you. Thank you for having me.
However, even the media was aware that other SEALs weren't happy about his decision.
Security.
I mean, why is he doing this?
He says he didn't talk about the raid until 2 years after, and that it was this moment with the 9/11 families after he donated his jersey, which sits in the 9/11 museum, and revealed to them.
And to those who say he's seeking celebrity?
He denies that, but there's a lot of resentment there among other SEALs and among those who say, you just don't talk about these things. He says he's not making money off of it as a motivational speaker. He just sticks to talking about teamwork, not the details of the raid, but there are plenty of detractors.
My sense is there is more to this story. Margaret, thank you so much.
Despite some negative attention, especially with people contrasting his story against Bissonnette's, Rob kept it calm and professional towards his teammate.
The two former SEALs give different accounts of the mission. O'Neill maintains that he fired the kill shot.
It was about the team.
Owen claims they both did.
I can't speak for him, and I can't say what he saw. I think he's saying what he saw, and I think it can be foggy. All I can do is tell you what I saw for sure. I'm telling my end of the story.
In 2015 would have the same tempo for Rob as he continued to grow his brand and notoriety. One interview that did catch my attention is the one he did at the Lipscomb University on April 28, 2015. In this interview, he shared a detail about the raid that I only can find in this interview for some reason.
We're better than they were. Things just worked. The lights were off for some reason, and as soon as we shot them, they were back on. I mean, I can't explain that.
The lights in the compound?
The whole house, the whole block was dark.
Really?
And then they turned back on. So it just meant to happen.
Anybody speculate about what that was about?
Maybe big guns upstairs. I don't know.
Wow.
Although it's not the most important detail, it's a very unique aspect of the raid that seems like it would be worthy of telling consistently. Rob also addresses the detractors in this interview.
From your position, I would think that's almost disrespectful when you think
it is.
what you did. What's your response to those people that, for some reason,
I don't care. It's funny to be in a spot to be the only human, well, sorry, two of us saw it happen, one of us is dead now, to actually see what happened. So when someone says that didn't happen, I'm like, I so don't care, because you've probably never done anything in your life other than complain. And the only reason you're mad at me is because you hate your own life, so have at it. Enjoy the misery. I didn't mean that to you, by the way. I'm not directing that at you, I'm just saying that.
On May 10th of 2015, a journalist named Seymour M. Hersh would release his article called The Killing of Osama Bin Laden. I think this article personally is very misinformed and more of a conspiracy theory piece. It talks about Bin Laden being a prisoner of the Pakistani Inter-Services Intelligence Agency and how an agent reported his location for $25 million. There's a lot of strange details that are completely unique to this article, but that's a story for another day. Overall, the article is completely different from any other account about the raid and the operation as a whole. The article does address Bissonnette and Rob by name. One lie that has endured is that the SEALs had to fight their way to their target. Only 2 SEALs have made any public statement. No Easy Day, a first-hand account of the raid by Matt Bissonnette, was published in September 2012. And 2 years later, Rob O'Neill was interviewed by Fox News. Both men have resigned from the Navy. Both have fired at Bin Laden. Their accounts contradict each other on many details, but their stories generally supported the White House version, especially when it came to the need to kill or be killed as the SEALs fought their way to Bin Laden. O'Neill even told Fox News that he and his fellow SEALs thought we were going to die. The more we trained on it, the more we realized this is going to be a one-way mission. But the retired official told me that in their initial debriefings, the SEALs made no mention of a firefight or indeed any opposition. The drama and danger portrayed by Bissonnette and O'Neill met a deep-seated need, the retired official said. SEALs cannot live with the fact that they killed Bin Laden totally unopposed, and so there has to be an account of their courage in the face of danger. The guys aren't going to sit around the bar and say it was an easy day. That's not going to happen. Again, I think this article is misinformed, but it'll be important later. Well, of course, this article would make its rounds in the news.
To kill or capture the al-Qaeda leader.
So of course they worked with us. The alternative is you want to believe what I call a Lewis Carroll fairy tale, that Bin Laden, who the most hunted man since 2002 in the world, decided the one safe place to live is in a compound 40 miles from the main capital of Pakistan.
Rob would respond 2 days later after it was published.
With us now is Rob O'Neill, a former Navy SEAL who says that he is the one who fired the shot that killed Osama bin Laden. Rob is now also a Fox News contributor. Nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Shep, thanks for having me.
He says there was no firefight.
Yeah, well, when I was first sent this article, I thought it was a joke. This thing is so ludicrous, it's almost an insult to the word ludicrous. For someone that wasn't there to say stuff that, that I saw happen, everything that we said happened that I said on my special, that's what went down. For this guy to have a few guys from Pakistan just lie to him and him to write this ridiculous story, it's a comedy.
"2016 was a quiet year for this story. The only real headline or story I could find about O'Neill was he was unfortunately charged with a misdemeanor DUI in Montana. CNN would cover it, but it doesn't seem like anything got out of hand and the media in general just left it alone. Well, 2017 would be a very important year for this story. Before we go back to Rob, we need to introduce a pivotal person to this story. Matthew Cole is a reporter that has done years of investigations in the Middle East during the global war on terrorism. On January 10th of 2017, he would release his article in The Intercept called The Crimes of SEAL Team 6.
I spent the last 2.5 years interviewing almost 20 current or former members of SEAL Team 6, including 4 former senior leaders of the command, to slowly but surely uncover, I think, fairly significant evidence of war crimes and cover-ups.
There is much more in this article than the Bin Laden raid, but for the sake of brevity, that's all we will be touching upon in this video. Rob is mentioned 41 times in this article, so I will show you why I feel is most germane to this story. O'Neill and Bissonnette's careers mirrored one another. They each entered Red Squadron at the same time, and they were both recipients of the Winkler hatchets handed out by Wyman Howard. They were both talented and competitive, and they were determined to profit from their experiences as SEALs. Less than a week before the assault, Bissonnette and O'Neill got into a shouting match at the Damnick base over who would sell the inside story of the raid. Several of their teammates on the mission had to intervene, according to a former SEAL Team 6 operator. A former SEAL Team 6 leader told me that O'Neill and Bissonnette originally agreed to cooperate on a book or movie project after the raid was over, but later had a falling out. The former SEAL leader said the extensive amount of training for the mission, combined with Bissonnette's planning role, gave both men ample opportunity to find ways to put themselves on the third floor in a good position to kill bin Laden. That's a very serious claim to make, but the article continues with more controversies about the raid. Two different SEALs, Robert O'Neill and Matthew Bissonnette, have publicly taken credit for killing bin Laden. According to multiple sources, both their accounts contain multiple self-serving falsehoods. The texture of those accounts reveals much about what went wrong with the most celebrated Special Operations Command in the U.S. military. The beauty of what they constructed, said a former teammate, is about how Bissonnette and O'Neill cornered the market on the bin Laden raid, is that there's only essentially one guy who can come forward and say that they're lying, and he won't ever talk. Once inside, the SEALs proceed slowly and methodically. O'Neill's teammate Sean killed Quay's brother and his wife on the first floor. After blowing open the iron gate block in the main stairway, the lead assaulters, among them Bissonnette and O'Neill, followed the operator known as Red up the stairs. Red encountered and shot bin Laden's son just before the second floor landing, and the SEALs following behind him fanned out into the hallways and rooms on the second floor to search and secure the area. It was then that both Bissonnette and O'Neill hung back on the stairway. Both should have remained on the second floor. Instead, as Red began to ascend to the third floor, they followed him up, hoping to get in on the kill. O'Neill was closer to Red, one of the first 5 assaulters. Bissonnette was much further back down the stairwell. As he approached the third bedroom, Red saw bin Laden standing in the doorway, peering out. He was unarmed and wearing pajamas. A few of his female relatives were nearby. Red came to a stop and fired 2 shots with his suppressed rifle. One shot hit bin Laden in the chest, and the second one glanced off his hip or thigh as bin Laden stumbled backwards into his bedroom and fell towards the foot of his bed. O'Neill and 2 or 3 more assaulters moved past Red into the bedroom as bin Laden laid on the ground. O'Neill then fired 2 rounds. The SEALs had been specifically asked to avoid shooting bin Laden in the face. O'Neill's decision to canoe the al-Qaeda leader made him unrecognizable. O'Neill's canoeing of bin Laden cost his teammates precious time, but his final shot to bin Laden's head was unremarkable to them. During the debrief, Red was identified as hanging bin Laden with a fatal shot, and O'Neill was credited with putting security rounds into him after bin Laden had already gone down. Some of the assaulters on the mission were also angry with Bissonnette and O'Neill because they neglected their responsibilities after bin Laden's son was shot. Instead of helping search and secure the second floor, both headed to the third floor hoping to get a chance at the historic kill. O'Neill was soon removed from his role as team leader in Red Squadron after he was observed publicly bragging in Virginia Beach bars that he was the man who shot bin Laden. Those are some very strong accusations that completely contradict Rob's version of events about the stairwell, the bedroom, and even his exit from SEAL Team 6. Matt Cole would go on to Democracy Now!'s YouTube channel and echo the statements of his article.
Canoed.
So, essentially, O'Neill, who is the second to fire shots on bin Laden, puts 2 rounds in his face or his forehead. And after he's down at a very close range, O'Neill fires a 3rd round, and that round hits him in the top of the forehead. And that's and what my reporting found was that he wasn't standing. There was no threat. He would have died had he not been shot by Mr. O'Neill. He was on the ground bleeding out from the shot to his chest. SEAL Team 6 has essentially what we call a rock of shame. They have a rock that sits in one of their senior leaders' offices that has names of former SEAL Team 6 members that are no longer welcome to come to the command physically. And 2 names that are on there are Matthew Bissonnette and Rob O'Neill from the bin Laden raid because of their publicity.
I'm very confident Rob is aware of these claims made against him in the article since he referenced it in an interview he did on Battleline Podcast.
Right there. Rob O'Neill cuts himself on Battleline Podcast.
Well, you know what you can do too is because that's the tomahawk that like the Intercept wants to prove we committed war crimes, like scalping people. And it's like, dude, I didn't carry the tomahawk on target. It's heavy and it's a waste. I don't need to. It's just really cool to cut yourself on with it.
There was a publication called The Intercept.
Yeah.
They did a whole thing.
They've been digging for war crimes since day one.
Right. So according to The Intercept's interview of former SEAL Team 6 members, when you arrived, they say bin Laden was already bleeding on the floor and possibly already dead after being shot in the chest and leg by the lead assaulter of the raid.
Which former operators was that?
They didn't say.
So my name's Rob O'Neill. I'm at SEAL Team 6. I'm telling you what happened.
Well, 3 months later, Rob would release his book titled The Operator, firing the shots that killed Osama Bin Laden in my many years as a SEAL team warrior on April 25th, 2017. In Chapter 21, Rob is in the house and they're clearing the second floor, preparing for the third floor. The train started moving up the stairs to the second floor with me in the back. Each man stepped over Khalid on the way up, and everyone except the point man started clearing the rooms to the right and left on the second floor. The point man kept his gun trained on the top of the stairs to the third floor, which was right in front of him with a curtain hanging over the entryway. At some point before I got there, he took a shot at a tall figure behind the curtain, but couldn't see the results. I moved up behind him and put my hand on his shoulder. There were only 2 of us left. That was it. We swiftly moved up the stairs to the curtain, and he pushed it aside. 2 women stood there screaming at us. The point man lunged at them, assuming that they had suicide vests, tackling both and landing on top of them. If they blew up, his body would absorb most of the blast, and I had to have a better chance of surviving and doing what we came there to do. I turned to the right and looked through a door into an adjoining room. Osama Bin Laden stood near the entrance at the foot of the bed, taller and thinner than I expected. His beard was shorter and whiter, but it was a guy whose face I'd seen 10,000, 100,000 times. He had a woman in front of him, his hands on her shoulders. In less than a second, I aimed above the woman's right shoulder and pulled the trigger twice. Bin Laden's head split open and dropped. I put another bullet in his head for insurance. I picked him up and put her on the bed with the woman. Now other SEALs began making their way into the room. I stood there kind of frozen, watched my guys do the work I'd seen them do hundreds of times. One of the guys came to me and asked, "Are you okay?" Was I? I felt blank. "Yeah," I said. "What do I do now?" He laughed and said, "Now we go find the computers." I said, "Yeah, you're right. I'm back. Holy shit. Yeah, you just killed Osama Bin Laden." In Chapter 21, they made it back to Afghanistan on the helos and read the point man and him have a talk. When they landed a few minutes after we did, I ran into the point man. He pulled me aside and asked, "Hey, was he hit when you went in the room?" "I don't think so. No," I said. I saw it again in my mind. Bin Laden standing there behind his wife, his hands resting on her shoulders, no sign of injury, fear or pain in her eyes. He was just kind of frozen, the classic deer in headlights. The point man slapped my shoulder. So the important takeaways from his book are that the point man took a shot at a figure through the curtain and his beard was short and white. And obviously that he took the shots that disabled and eliminated UBL. His account is different from what Matt Bissonnette wrote about, who was number 2 in the stack.
But Bin Laden's in there, and the guy in front of me took a shot before we got there, and they're moving around, and I'm the 2-man, and my job as the 2-man is to hold him and wait. His job is to simply look forward.
You passed Khalid, and now you're number 2 in the stack. You're right behind the point man.
Yep. I kind of trying to look around him, hear him take a couple shots, kind of see a head, somebody disappear back into the room.
The point man had seen someone stick his head out a door?
Mm-hmm.
To who entered the room and how.
Damn. So and simply because he went this way, I turned this way. And standing 3 feet in front of me is Osama Bin Laden, and he's got his hands on his wife's shoulders.
You stepped into the room and saw the man lying on the floor. What did you do?
Myself and the next assaulter in, we both engaged him several more times and then rolled off and then continued clearing the room.
And even to the beard color.
So you knew it was him as soon as you turned the corner?
Yep. His beard is gray.
His beard wasn't gray at all. I'd studied lots of photos of him, and they were always gray. His beard was dark black.
The beard color is a very interesting point to me. Rob could have removed that detail in his story and book to have less contrast against Bissonnette's account, but they have both very adamantly over the years maintained their points about the beard color.
I thought skinnier than I thought. His beard is shorter and gray. That's his nose. That's him. He's not surrendering.
And he's taller, 6'3", skinnier, short beard, gray hair. That's his nose. He's a threat. He's not surrendering. Taller than I thought, skinnier than I thought, short gray beard. That's his nose. That's him. He's not surrendering. He's a suicide bomber. I got to take him down. So I shot. He's taller than I thought. He's a lot skinnier than I thought he would be. His beard's got some gray in it. That's his nose. That's his face.
Pretty messy, but it was pretty easy to tell it was him. His beard was pitch black. Yeah. Right? Freshly dyed. Serious? He dyed his beard. That's why his beard's pitch black in all the photos.
To be clear, the picture of Bin Laden after the raid has never come out publicly. There was a fake that floated around for a couple of years, but all the Tier 1 operators are out as influencers have confirmed that it's fake. Do I think the Navy will ever release it? I doubt it, especially after all this time that's passed. But it'd be very interesting to see what color that beard was. Well, after Rob released his book, his notoriety would skyrocket. For the most part, he was praised for sharing his story, but of course there would be criticism. Rob would defend himself when discussing others not being okay with him monetizing his stories.
They don't like the fact that you're speaking about it because a lot of them at home, they'd be like, who got him? And they'd be like, I can't say. And they'd wink a little.
I run into that a lot. And generally, it's like if the guy that says, well, I can't talk about it, it's like, well, you probably don't have anything to talk about.
Right.
That's probably what it is. Because, I mean, I know a lot of SEALs. I know a lot of pilots. I know a lot of Marines. And if they've done something, they'll tell you about it. I mean, some guys are quieter than others. But, the guys that always say, I can't talk about it, but they're usually not much there.
For the remainder of 2017, there is only one interview I saw that caught my attention as far as details of the raid. On September 19, 2017, he would do an interview with 60 Minutes Australia.
3 times, or twice in the head as he was standing up, and once more on the ground. That happened.
I know that detail of him starting to stand has been a point of criticism, but I feel like we can categorize that as either a deviation of the story or just a verbal slip-up. But the next detail is stranger to look at.
It's also been written that it was the point man who shot him first.
I don't know if the point man didn't shoot when I was there. And when I got there, I can tell you what I saw. When we went up the stairs, the point man jumped onto, they did say he took a shot up the stairs. When I saw Bin Laden, he was not hit, and he was standing on 2 feet. And so I got to assume I shot him the first 2 or 3 times.
So he said that he was unsure that Red had taken a shot. But in his book, he acknowledged that the point man had taken a shot. Again, trying to be fair, maybe since he was on such a big platform, he was nervous. But even from other interviews, that seemed to be very different. In 2018, Rob would continue doing interviews and telling his story. The only thing that really popped up in the headlines for that year was that he got a little too tipsy on a flight and was asked to take a different one. Rob would go on the Team Never Quit podcast and talk about the incident.
I did in public that I got in trouble for that people saw I was getting drunk on a plane. The last thing I did that didn't, I got drunk on a plane.
It seems to be a pattern there.
Well, no, it's just funny because I was like, the millions of miles I've flown in the last 6 years, I'm amazed that's the first time someone just said, can you step off the plane?
Yeah, right? Dude, I remember when I was contracting, dude, I'd be annihilated before I even got on the plane.
Yeah, I had to make some life changes. One of his, you don't need a pregame in the airport bar before you fly somewhere. There's like no reason for that. Like you're by yourself. Who are you trying to impress? Like the fact that you can piss without going to the bathroom?
Again, I don't believe this incident had any significant impact on his speaking opportunities or business growth. In 2019, another book would be released that incorporates details of the Bin Laden raid. Sea Stories, My Life in Special Operations is an autobiography by retired Admiral William McRaven, who was the commander of the Joint Special Operations Command during the raid. He was also at Jalalabad to confirm the kill to President Obama. Fun fact, you see his name tape in Zero Dark 30. William does share a lot about the logistics of the raid, but there's only 2 important points for us to look at. First, we'll look at Chapter 17, Neptune Spear, while the operation is underway, and Admiral McRaven recounts watching the mission from Jalalabad. Not immediately knowing what had caused the first helo's problems, the pilot and the second helo landed outside the compound walls. From my closet, I watched on the video screen as the SEALs moved towards the main compound. So from the Admiral's words, it sounds like he did have some type of live feed to observe the final moments of the raid. This gave me pause initially thinking there might have been live feeds from the SEALs, but Rob would clarify what type of live feed there was in an interview.
It's like the one day that everyone watches C-SPAN.
Could they watch now? Was there video? Could they actually see live action video?
No, they could see from above. They had some assets above us to watch, but they weren't in the house. They couldn't see in the house, and we don't want them to see what's going on. And you hear, well, everyone wore GoPros. No, there were no cameras inside. We had the disposable cameras to take the picture. That's it.
Were you able?
So the specifics of what the Admiral knows about what happened inside the house is the information shared from the SEALs, since there is no live feed from the operators. William does share the following details in the book. Inside the compound, a 2-man element of the assault force had nearly reached the 3rd floor. From behind a curtain separating the stairway from the 3rd floor, a shadowy face emerged, his dark eyes fixed on the men rushing up the stairway. The lead SEAL, his gun tucked firmly to his shoulder, finger on the trigger, fired towards the figure, but the rounds impacted high. Without hesitation, the SEAL stormed up the last few steps, through the curtain into the room. Inside, 2 young girls stood at the entrance. Nearly certain the girls were wearing suicide vests, the lead SEAL threw himself on the young woman to shield the partner from the blast. Entering the room, immediately behind, the second SEAL came face to face with a tall, thin man who was using an older woman to shield his body. The second SEAL, Senior Chief Petty Officer Rob O'Neill, leveled his weapon and fired 3 rounds at the man, 2 to the head and 1 for good measure. The tall man crumpled to the floor, dead before he hit the ground. So the accounts the Admiral puts in his book are that Red took shots at his shadowy face, but I assume missed if that's what he means by impacted high, and he credits Rob with killing UBL. Having Admiral credit you for any type of operation is a huge boost of confidence, even if they are receiving secondhand information. It's safe to assume that due diligence was done for this book. "2020 would come with another book that details about the raid. No Ordinary Dog was released on April 21st, 2020. The book is written by Navy SEAL dog handler Will Chency, and it's about his dog Cairo. They were both on the Neptune Spear mission. An interesting point of intel that was shared during one of the briefs was UBL's hair color. There's no guarantee that the pacer was in fact Bin Laden, but the intelligence officials at the briefing seemed confident. He was over 6 feet tall and lean, with a long gray beard. He looked very much like Bin Laden. He behaved in a manner of someone important, never taking part in work of others in the compound, which sprawled like nothing else in the neighborhood. There were even walls ranging from roughly 10 to 20 feet in height surrounding the compound, which was comprised of a large 3-story house, a small guest house, and other smaller structures that were likely used for housing animals. I don't recall that point about the pacer's beard being gray being mentioned anywhere else during the briefings, but it makes me wonder more about this minute detail. In the next chapter, Will shares the extent of his knowledge about what happened on the 3rd floor. As I exited a room and walked into a 2nd floor hallway, Rob came down the stairs from the 3rd floor. We both walked into another room. Our eyes met. He nodded and sort of half smiled. It was a look I've rarely seen from Rob, who was typically all business during an operation. "Dude," he said, "I think I shot that motherfucker." "What?" I said. "Seriously?" Rob nodded. "Yeah, I shot that fucker in the face." He didn't use Bin Laden's name, but I knew exactly who he meant. We both froze for a second in the hallway. Later in the chapter, Will shares a very unbiased outlook on the story. Multiple books and lengthy magazine articles have chronicled in detail the drumbeat of Operation Neptune Spear, including some written by members of SEAL Team Blink. If you have read more than one of these accounts, you know that there's no consensus as to what exactly happened that night in Abbottabad. The entire operation lasted less than 45 minutes, and in that time, not everything went smoothly. Starting with the first helicopter being forced to ditch against a wall in the compound, the house and surrounding neighborhood was mostly unlit, so night vision goggles were needed throughout. There was tremendous pressure to complete the operation swiftly, and there was resistance. Although Will didn't say he saw Rob do it, him only sharing his interaction I think is important when deciding who is credible in this timeline. Later in the year, Rob would get into some controversy by posting a picture of him in an airplane without a mask and responding to a subsequent ban from Delta Airlines.
Former SEAL Team 6 legend Robert O'Neill posted this selfie aboard a Delta flight with the message, "I am not a blank." Delta banned him, but O'Neill remains defiant today, posting, "Thank God it wasn't Delta flying us in when we killed Bin Laden. We weren't wearing masks."
During an interview with Newsmax, he would respond to the controversy.
Dude, that was there's a lot of checklists you need to approve of in COVID when you book a flight. One of them is about the mask policy, and for some reason, just a little bit of hypocrisy of how wear your mask until you're eating or drinking. And I just received my Delta issued chips and water, and now I can take my mask off. And I was thinking, if I can wear it while I'm drinking and eating, what if I'm drinking and eating the entire flight? So I just snapped a quick selfie, and I use social media as entertainment. I'm never really serious about it. And if you try to make a few joke omelets on social media, you're going to break an egg. This one just didn't go over well. And I'm certainly not trying to, like the guy behind me, I didn't notice had a USMC hat when I posted it. It was not a dig at the Marine Corps. I love the Marine Corps. I love all services. And he has the rules. That's fine. But it's not like I blew the rules off. And some of these media outlets lied and said I was kicked off the plane. I was never kicked off the plane. No one ever said anything to me.
Wow.
And I was joking. And, again, bad joke. USMC guy behind me. I wasn't calling him a name. It got way out of hand.
The last piece of information about this story that we need to take a look at is a tweet that is a deeper cut. There is a tweet that has been referenced over the years by many people that have covered this case and have backed its validity. It was from the G2 Precision LLC Twitter account from August 20th, 2020. In this screenshot, we see it states that Matt Bissonnette was number 2 in the stack and Rob was 4th to enter the room and put rounds into UBL. One of the employees in the company is very obviously connected to Rob during his time as a SEAL. Although he has a small social media presence, I cannot confirm that he's the one who actually made the tweet from the company account, so I won't include his name. But he was pretty easy to find and connect to DEVGRU's Red Squadron. This tweet bubbles up from time to time when Rob's story is challenged. However, it was deleted and Precision LLC's Twitter is inactive to this day. "10 years after the elimination of Bin Laden, CBS News would post a story about how the mission had an impact on the SEALs.
Our team spoke with more than a dozen members of the SEAL community, including former and active duty SEALs, who said most serve with honor. But they also said there is a corrupt element in their brotherhood, adding the celebrity that came with the raid made some SEALs feel untouchable."
Rob's site and merch would be specifically used as a prop to the SEALs doing the interview.
SEAL team. Online, former SEALs monetize their newfound fame. Take a look at these autograph photos that we bought online. Why are you shaking your head?
I don't want to touch it.
This is not okay.
No, it's not okay. What about the quiet professional does that encompass? None of it.
Before I came into the Navy, almost every SEAL I met, when I asked him point blank, "Are you a Navy SEAL?" and I knew he was a Navy SEAL, he denied it.
Looking at a screenshot of the merch the reporter brought, I'm very sure it's one of Rob's Operator Collection prints. This interview displayed even years after him coming forward, there are SEALs that are still very displeased with his approach on monetizing the raid. Later that year, another book would be released. This one would be from the investigative reporter that wrote the article for The Intercept in 2017, Matthew Cole. The book is called Code Over Country and was released on November 2nd, 2021. Now, there's a lot in this book, more than we could ever break down in one video and investigate. But again, for the sake of this video, we are only going to focus on the points that provide details and context to Rob's stolen valor accusations and the lawsuit controversies. The first point we'll look at revolves around how Rob was sharing his experiences during the raid back stateside. In the days and weeks after the Bin Laden raid, Chief Pay Officer Rob O'Neill caught the attention of his senior leaders at the command, and it wasn't for good reasons. O'Neill's drunken antics off base became difficult to ignore. While Obama's administration officials leaked out various and sometimes contradictory details about the raid, O'Neill took his victory lap through Virginia Beach, leaking his own version. The Red Squadron operator had publicly declared while drunk in several bars that he was the man who shot Bin Laden, Team 6 leaders were told. The reaction inside the command for bragging about Bin Laden was swift. O'Neill was relieved from his team leader position and removed from Red Squadron. He ultimately transferred to Silver Squadron, completed a final deployment to Afghanistan in the winter of 2011 to 2012, and separated from the Navy in August 2012, just as the controversy of No Easy Day broke to the press. Rob shared different reasons for leaving the squadron. In the past, he has said it was because teammates were jealous of him being recognized that he was the one that shot and killed Bin Laden. He has also asserted that it was other teammates that leaked his name around the bars on Virginia Beach. It doesn't really matter. The important piece that Cole asserts here is that the command took action against him for sharing details about the raid. Cole would also dissect Rob's Esquire article from 2013 before he came out publicly and compare and contrast it against Bissonnette's statements and what other SEAL Team 6 operators had told him and how they feel about it. This account did not sit well with some veterans of the mission. Word spread quickly that O'Neill was a SEAL in the article, since his personality, even when anonymous, was obvious to his teammates. Some were outraged that he had been so brazenly inaccurate and self-serving in his account. For many on the raid, including those who had been present in Bin Laden's bedroom with O'Neill, it was the first time that they heard anyone say that terrorist leader was standing or posing any threat of any kind after a red shot. O'Neill offered a false scenario where Bin Laden threatened the SEALs. O'Neill's teammates had in fact located Bin Laden's famous short-barreled AK after he was killed, on a shelf that was not visible from the bedroom. There were no bullets in it. The team had been given the mission to kill Bin Laden, regardless of how they found him. As it turned out, he was killed leaning his body out the bedroom door. The last thing he would have seen was a darkened hall or his bedroom ceiling, if not a glimpse of a muzzle flash. A quote from the book that summarizes the situation from Cole's eyes is from a SEAL Team 6 operator. The beauty of what they have constructed, their tired SEAL Team 6 operator continued, about how Bissonnette and O'Neill cornered the marker on the Bin Laden raid, is there is only one guy essentially who can come forward and say they're lying, and he won't ever talk. The last relevant point from the book is the piece about Rob being PNG'd or excommunicated from the unit. Bissonnette and O'Neill did suffer unofficial consequences for their brazen dishonesty. In 2016, they were unofficially banished from SEAL Team 6 headquarters. The command's top non-commissioned officer at the time, Master Chief Pay Officer Scott Kentler, placed their names on the so-called SEAL Team 6 Rock of Shame, the unofficial list of unit pariahs. Now, there's some very large accusations in this book, just like the Intercept article, so I wondered if Rob knew of the book. I assume he did. Well, I was able to find a clip of him acknowledging it a year later in a podcast.
Yeah. But, like, especially with us, if the more latitude the better we're going to be. We're not going to go out there and murder people, even though a lot of journalists love to try to release books about war crimes. But no, we don't kill innocent people, because I've seen it in action. We're the good guys.
In 2022, Jack Carr, a fellow Navy SEAL and author, would release his 4-part interview with Matt Bissonnette. To my knowledge, this is the first time he spoke on camera since his 60-minute interview. In the 4-part series, Bissonnette would continue to conceal his identity. They would talk about his time in the Navy and the repercussions of his book, and of course talk about the raid. The first point I want to look at is Bissonnette talking about clearing the 2nd floor and moving to the 3rd floor.
Go right to the 3rd deck.
2nd deck's cleared. We're now heading up to the 3rd because he's taking his shots, right? Now we've got a whole train of guys to move up to the 3rd floor, right?
And it's the same point man is in front of you. Yeah.
This was not people flooding the house, running in every direction. Why? There's no hostages to risk that speed on. It's combat clearance. So it's slow, methodical. There's no rush for anybody to run to the 3rd floor. Tactically, why would 2 people be in such a rush to run upstairs? There's no hostage. All we do is combat clearance, slow, methodical. So we made sure we had the appropriate number of people to assault up to the 3rd floor and then clear it.
So do you give the squeeze?
Yep.
Dang, dude.
Yep.
So Bissonnette again asserts that the point man was the same that took the shot at Khalid, and also takes what I feel to be an indirect jab at Rob by saying it was slow and there was no reason for 2 people to go up to the 3rd floor. Next, Bissonnette again confirms his version and the version that Matt Cole wrote, that Red took a shot at a head Alvadore and hit his shot.
Okay. So now it's okay. We're heading up to the 3rd floor, narrow hallway, point man's in front of me. Sees a head pop out the doorway at the top of the stairs, takes a shot, headshot, right? Head disappears into the room.
Bissonnette would go on to share the details about UBL's beard again being jet black.
Pretty messy, but it was pretty easy to tell it was him. His beard was pitch black, right? Freshly dyed.
But another detail he would share that interests me is about the CIA agent confirming the identity of the body after the raid.
Remember like it's yesterday. Dark C-130 with the red lights on it. She's the only one sitting on the bird. She's sitting just at the top of the ramp, right? She's holding her knees, and she's sitting there sobbing. And we literally get on. We got all our gear on. We're literally carrying the body bag. And this is somebody that she'd worked for a large part of her life. Sole focus was she just worked herself out of a job to some degree.
So Bissonnette details the agent being more in line with how Zero Dark 30 portrayed her, of it being more of an emotional moment for her. Rob's description of the event has been pretty consistently different.
I asked her, do you have room for this in your backpack? And she said yes. And actually, what was funny about her, just to describe a discrepancy with the movie, is in the movie, they brought her over to the body and she looked at it and kind of walked away and like sort of cried. That's not her style at all. I walked her over and said, is this your guy? And she looked down and with an a cuss word I'm not going to use, she looked down and said, well, I guess I'm out of a job.
And we walked. Now, the movie Zero Dark 30 is good, not great, because of this one scene. At the end, they walk her to the body and they leave her alone and she cries. And then that's not what happened. I don't think she cried when she was born. So,
just like the beard detail, it's very interesting to see that these accounts are so different when there shouldn't be any deviation. On the 4th part of the interview, Bissonnette would make a passive jab that again feels like is directed at Rob.
Whatever. The SEAL books that came out that would piss people off were the ones where they were written by the people who hadn't done much, right? I felt like, right, Lone Survivor, it is what it is. American Sniper is what it is. There was, another author out there that writes a lot more and has done a lot less, and I think that set this bad precedent. I don't know where it came from.
2 months later, Matt Cole would appear on the Team House YouTube channel. Matt would, of course, talk about the Bin Laden raid controversy. Matt would confirm again that Red fired the fatal shots at UBL.
We've heard a lot about the Bin Laden raid. There's a lot about it in your book. We've heard a lot about O'Neill and Bissonnette, a lot out there about those guys. Tell us about this one operator whose call sign was Red.
Red. Yeah, well, Red should be known as the SEAL operator who fired into Bin Laden and effectively killed him in Pakistan in 2011. He was at the head of the stack that went up. I think, in fact, as it happens, he also shot Bin Laden's son on the second deck. And as I understand it, and I think as I reported in the book, he fired 2 shots, at least 2 shots. The first hit Bin Laden, grazed him somewhere, not quite clear if it was the hip or the leg, but then he got him center mass, and at that point, Bin Laden fell back into the room and onto the ground.
He would also state that Rob was the 4th man in the room to shoot Bin Laden.
Who was there, confirmed my version of what was reported and what the version that's in this book, and describes O'Neill, I think, as being the 4th guy through the doorway and the 4th man to shoot Bin Laden. So
2 months later, on May 16, 2022, another infamous clip would be born. Andy Stumpf is the host of the Cleared and Hot podcast. He's a retired Navy SEAL who's also served in DEVGRU or SEAL Team 6. During a podcast he was hosting with 2 retired Green Beret veterans, the topic of UBL was brought up.
Question.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the dude who shot Bin Laden?
Rob O'Neill.
Rob O'Neill.
Well,
what's your relationship with him? You guys are buddies with him?
He's been on the podcast a couple times. Yeah. Like Rob, but there was the other guy too. Who's the other guy?
Mark. Can we say his real name?
Owen
That's
is his
nom
de guerre. I don't know what his regular name.
I'll tell you off air because I don't know how he how he rolls with that. He wrote a book also though, No Easy Day.
Yeah.
Which got that's the
Was
one
he
that
on
got
your
all the money.
podcast?
No, he was on Jack Carr's.
Oh, he was.
Who, to put a bow on it, if we see him as a pedophile in 5 years, we won't be surprised.
Yeah. They're buddies, suppose. They're friends.
Yes, close friends.
Yeah,
I think they went to the
thing.
same Buds class,
yeah.
actually.
Okay.
Or nearby.
Got it.
Yeah, near.
Yeah.
Let's just say there may be contention between who shot who.
Right.
Interesting. Between the two of those guys.
Beyond that.
Right. I've heard that.
It's as gently as I can. I wasn't there.
See, when you kill a bad guy with a buddy, it's not about who broke the first round.
Obviously, with Andy being in the community, he would know if there was some discrepancies. To be fair, he didn't specifically say why there's contention, but it's easy to infer what he was talking about. Rob would do a couple more big podcasts this year, one of them being Sean Ryan. He, in a way, addressed his detractors in a very positive response.
Don't ask, I'll help. But if you're just hating, then take it somewhere else. There's a point where you just got to stop caring. I don't care.
Yeah.
But it's like there's even been points where they're like, well, we heard you didn't kill Bin Laden, and I'm like, some days I wish I didn't. I'm just telling you what happened.
Yeah.
"2023 would be the year where all the drama would start to begin for Rob and his story. The first abnormality I want to ante is when Rob was on the Real Hustle podcast.
Go, go, go. I'm going to squeeze you. And so he's up there, and this is my story. He might say different if he ever tells his story, but he's pointing up and he sees what do you think are suicide bombers. And I'm looking back because I want more guys to go up this last set of stairs because Bin Laden's in there and we're going to blow up. And he starts talking. He said, hey, man, we got to go.
Rob has shared his story about him and Red pretty consistently many times, so I'm not sure why he made the distinction that the point man might say something different than his version of events. Now we'll introduce a protagonist or antagonist of this story depending on what side of the fence you're on. Brent Tucker is a retired Delta Force operator that also has several entrepreneurial endeavors and his own podcast. At the time, he was a guest on the Antihero Podcast when the infamous clip came out on August 9th, 2023.
It's the Rob O'Neill who didn't kill Bin Laden. I said it here.
Did he or did he not?
No, he didn't kill Bin Laden. It's the worst kept secret in all special operations. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I was on the mission. I'd be as big as a liar as Rob O'Neill. I worked with a lot of those guys. I'm still friends with some of them. And specifically the Red Squadron guys whose mission it was. And you'll never meet one where you go, hey, you know Rob O'Neill? And they go, oh yeah, he's a great guy. He killed Bin Laden. They won't do it. They'll either be very professional about it and be like, yeah, I know that guy. Which is all you need to know about what someone thinks about a guy. Or they may say it. I kind of do wish that community would finally do something about that. Come out more publicly and denounce that. They're a very professional community as a whole, and they're just too professional to do it. But we all know.
This clip was from episode 35, Delta Force and Cigars, part 1. Unfortunately, this video is now only members only, so we can't see the full context. But from what we can infer from the other videos, this was a small clip of the overall video. Well, Rob would respond on his podcast, The Operator, that is posted on the Drink Bros YouTube channel. On his Khalid Shake These Nuts, The Operator, episode 58, Rob would indirectly respond.
Most of them have great senses of humor, but there was a dude from one of the services that was saying that I was full of shit. I don't know why I paid attention. For some reason, I like put it up on my story. Like, wow. I mean, I don't even remember what I said, and I said something to them like, "What the deuce, man? You can, if there's an issue, you can talk to me." And there are certain guys. There were some guys bashing me, and I answered them, and I don't give a fuck. I've never thought about these guys. I never will again. I shouldn't be talking about them now, but this group, another 1,000 followers, and if you need to dump on me, that's fine. And if I can help you make more money, and if I can help you pay the rent, I'm flattered. You know, if you're on a podcast bragging about how you're so quiet, you're kind of defeating yourself. Just own it. Like, okay, I'm on the internet now, and I'm talking shit now, and I'm on a podcast now. You might as well just go for it and write a book if your stories are any good and anybody cares. Do that. So,
one thing I do want to note is that even though that Antihero Podcast episode is now behind the membership wall, we can still see how many views it has. We can see it's between 14 and 13,000, and the short has 500,000. Yes, there are some eyes on the clip, but not that many. I'm bringing this up because the video from the Team House that is about the two discrepancies of who took the shot at UBL for Matt Cole is at 235,000. Not to mention the other significant videos that challenge Rob's narrative have more significant exposure than the initial Antihero clip. So I'm not sure why Brent got such a reaction from Rob. Maybe it was because he was so direct, but much more would come. Unfortunately, soon after, Rob would be arrested again. But this time, the arrest would make headlines. He was accused of hitting a security guard and calling him the N-word while in Texas. He would be charged with misdemeanors for the event. 5 days after the arrest, the now infamous Antihero podcast would come out called Episode 37, Rob O'Neill, The Web of Lies. This would be the channel's first big exposed video. They'd also have a guest, Mike Rigoro, to analyze clips of Rob to look for deception during the episode. In the beginning of the video, Tyler admits he knew what would come from him making a clip about the initial episode.
Brent spoke about something about Rob O'Neill for about 2 minutes. I cropped that into a clip, and I'm not gonna lie, I knew exactly what I was doing, and that clip went viral. So viral that it made it to Rob O'Neill's phone.
Brent would go on to explain why other SEAL Team 6 members won't come out or talk directly against Rob. He would explain that Rob is PNG'd, which means that he's not welcome to come back to the command. But most importantly, Brent would say this at the beginning of the episode.
Before we get into it, I want to delineate, what I'm doing here and what I'm trying to say about Rob. Rob is an American war hero. I'm not taking that away from Rob. Rob has 2 silver stars. One from the raid from UBL. He didn't get the silver star for shooting UBL. Everyone on that, it was a mission award that everyone got, and rightfully so. But his truly valorous silver star, anytime that silver star gets brought up in some sort of conversation, every guy says he was a hero that day. He was badass here on that silver star. He served his country honorably as a Whiteside SEAL member. He served his country honorably as a Tier 1 operator, which is an amazing feat that should never be taken away from him. I do not have a problem with, I'm not saying he was dishonest in this one piece of one mission the guy was on, and 399 missions of everything else that he's done is crap. And I just want to make that absolutely clear. I'm not here to personally break him down as a man. But at the end of the day, you can do all those things and be that amazing, but it does not give you the right to take away valor from someone else on a mission and make millions of dollars on something you didn't do, and that has to be corrected.
Brent would go over the reporting that Matt Cole did in the article and book involving Rob and bring up the Andy clip from the podcast. Brent would then go through Rob's story, but break it down in context of a Tier 1 operator's analysis.
There's no way he ever thought a Tier 1 operator was going to come around and nitpick his story for truth. He's not prepared for this.
Brent would provide a new layer of details to make Rob's story much more questionable from a tactics side. We would need to put at least a 15-minute clip of Brent's breakdown to understand this. But long story short, if you watch the way Brent breaks down the second and third floor, Rob's story seems strange that some of the best service members in the world would be missing shots at close range or forgetting tactics during the most important mission of the last century. They would then show some clips from the past interviews that contradict Rob's story before some new points would be introduced, such as Rob DMing Brent after the initial clip.
Didn't know if I was going to mention it or not, but I will. Let me tell you something an innocent person doesn't do. They don't text the podcast and say, hey, why would you say that about me? I'm paraphrasing this. You can post it from Rob O'Neill and say, we need to talk about this. There's a way that both of us can win.
Yeah. So
is that what he said?
Well, so one thing I've told people in messaging that I won't ever post an inbox, a direct message. That's more my moral compass. I won't ever, no matter what. But I will talk about it. And what he said was really like he was upset. Like, how could you guys do this? You know, it was like something. And I said, hey man, well, we want to talk. And yeah, essentially he said, we can all prosper. I don't know how he thought it was going to happen. Like how if you were going to lead him in and then let him go. But
I don't know. And I'll tell you, I understand that you may think it dirty to do that, but then you're no better than the SEAL Team 6 guys who knew the truth but wouldn't stand next to me with it.
That is a very interesting message that I hope Brent one day is able to share to provide some clarity. But I do understand and respect Tyler not wanting to post DMs as a professional courtesy. Brent would end the podcast with this thought.
And the truth is, you don't have to. Man, you've been living with this for 10 years. I know you've always been worried the truth is going to come out. And it always has, but it's never really caught. It's never really caught traction. This is gonna catch traction. I'm here to tell you. And I know you feel cornered and you don't know like how do I get out of this? Hey, America loves a redemption story. You can come out. I will come out. You're right. There is a way we can both come out ahead on this. I will be right next to you as a tier 1 operator in arms, an Army guy and a Navy guy, and I will stand next to you when you tell the truth and be like, man, yeah, I'm sorry. The truth just kind of got away from me, and I started down this road I never intended. I'll sit there next to you and give you a huge hug. I'll take you out for a beer.
He was very right. That video would catch traction. To this day, that episode is in the top 10 videos about Rob O'Neill. On September 8th, 2023, Rob would go on the Operator Podcast and somewhat address the drinking arrest. He would say that he can't go into specifics, but didn't make any response about the Antihero Podcast, which is understandable since the arrest would be a more pressing matter and stressful, I imagine. But besides covering sponsorships and other current events in the video, he would share something important.
Middle of it, but you may have seen some of the pictures. They, they took a few. So I'm not making light of it, and I'm not trying to blame anybody but myself. That happens, and
But after these events, it looked like things would semi go back to normal for Rob for the rest of the year. Moving to 2024, we'll be introducing another informed investigator to this story. Matt Cubbler is an Army intelligence veteran who also worked as an air marshal and a police officer. Matt was a high school classmate of a Navy SEAL commander named Job Price. Matt was asked to investigate Job's death due to its suspicious circumstances. During his investigation of Job's death, his investigation began to intersect with the other SEAL controversies to include the UBL raid. Matt would go on to speak multiple times on the J Slate USA YouTube channel. Some of these times were with Rob O'Neill himself. The first interaction we're going to look at is from an episode that premiered on January 12, 2024. They would talk about Rob's background, the raid, and even Matt Cole's book. Matt Cubbler would bring up discrepancies from Rob's version of Matt Bissonnette's. Rob wouldn't want to talk about Bissonnette specifically, but would say he would work with anyone from that raid again. The first major point from the interview is when Cubbler asked for distant specifics from Rob, and Rob shares this little tidbit.
Shots from the number one guy, the point guy, Reds. There was a couple shots taken up to the third floor. I'm not getting into any names. Nobody wants to be named. I just know that there was a guy that was, I think
I think that two guys that switched out from point to point, like going to the second floor, there was one, and then they split off. And I think, but I didn't see it. Another guy took point, and then that was the point man for me. And there was a shot fired up the stair, up through the curtain before I got there.
That is a weird detail to come out so many years later. Rob has very consistently stated or implied that the point man on the second floor was the same one that ended up on the third floor. So how would Rob not know if they switched out if he immediately went up to two men while the rest of the stack broke off to clear rooms? Matt would continue to contrast and ask questions about the gaps between Rob and Bissonnette's story. Rob would say this.
Okay, I have an email. Again, I don't want to mention his name, but you have. But I got an email shortly after the raid asking me what happened in the room because he didn't know. So I'll get you that email if you want. That'll be interesting.
That would be a very interesting email for Rob to share. Again, he doesn't say it's from Bissonnette, but that's who they were talking about just before. The last point from the interview that Matt brings up is that he was not credited for killing Ubiel during the debrief.
The debriefing was going on and you offered your portion of that, what happened, that it was never mentioned that you killed Osama Bin Laden in that recorded debrief. Do you recall that at all?
Yeah, I recall the recorded debrief, and I no shit. When we got done recording it, I said to myself, I'm immediately going to regret this. But we do our best at cleaning up debriefs to avoid. We don't know what's going to happen on a mission this big, and we don't know if people threw errant shots brought up ever, and that's it.
The way that Rob explains it makes sense. It's a concise team level and not individualistic brief. However, in the Intercept article, it did say that Red was credited. During the debrief, Red was identified as having hit Bin Laden with the fatal shot, and O'Neill was credited with putting security rounds into him after Bin Laden had already gone down. I unfortunately doubt the Navy will ever release the AR for our clarity. A month later, Matt Cubbler would go on the Antihero Podcast and talk about the controversy and other Navy SEAL topics on episode 60, Navy SEAL Corruption video. Matt would restate his opinion of Rob and the raid from his contacts.
Contacts created, and the contacts that I've spoken to, not a single one, says that Rob O'Neill killed Bin Laden.
Will they come out publicly and say it?
No.
And why?
Never.
And why won't they?
Because there's probably multiple layers to that question. Number one, I think there is still, even though he's PNG'd.
At the same time, Jay Slay would release another episode with Matt. In this one, Matt would share a new name that during my research I have never heard anyone say before or since.
Any of them out, and anybody else on that four-man team that went into that room, including Reds, Bissonnette, a guy named Keith, I won't say his last name, and Bissonnette.
Sure, I'm writing that down. That's the first time I've heard you drop that name, Keith.
Yeah. So, but nobody would know who that is because they wouldn't know how to ask for that information. But
sure,
Keith was number 3 in the stack. Rob was number 4. Bissonnette was number 2, and
okay.
they all shot him.
So the mysterious additional SEALs named Keith. The Matt Cubbler clip is interesting, since Matt Cole also wrote that it was a 4-man team that entered the room and that Rob was the 4th man.
And although it's no longer available, I will tell you that on Twitter about a year ago, a member of the unit who was there confirmed my version of what was reported and what the version that's in this book, and describes O'Neill, I think, as being the 4th guy through the doorway and the 4th man to shoot Bin Laden.
That is also referenced in the tweet from years ago. So it's curious to me why Red, the first guy in the stack, gets so much attention in the story, but there's a 3rd SEAL out there that could prove the whole story to be true or false, just like Red. Matt would go back onto Jay Slay USA's channel and talk about the discrepancies again on May 5th, 2024. One point I hadn't thought of before was Amal already being shot and standing.
So I want to make sure we get the key points. But you had mentioned she was shot. Was she standing upright? She must have been a tough chick. Like, think about the fact that if she was shot and he was standing behind her and she was standing in front of him, they were both upright, that she's standing with a leg wound from a 5.56 round, which is a very brutal round to be shot with.
Bin Laden was 6'4". I can't imagine that Amal was anywhere near that height. With O'Neill's story that Bin Laden was standing behind Amal and he had his hands on her shoulders with her being shot in the leg and her being moved forward, now does seem difficult to imagine. The last detail that Cubbler shares is where Red potentially is now.
actually came out of the closet and told his truth. Right?
Yeah, well, based on his current employment, that's not happening anytime soon. So,
what's his current employment?
Let's just say he's for one of the 3-letter agencies.
Okay.
And he's not coming out. So.
Tier 1 operators often find themselves with career paths for either the FBI or CIA. And if he's really there, then I would agree with Matt that there is no hope of him coming out and providing some clarity about the story. Almost a year after his arrest in Texas, Rob would file a lawsuit against the hotel and security guard on August 18, 2024. The lawsuit seeks to receive economic damages for past and future lost revenues due to the defamation that is accused from the security guard. The lawsuit would lay out a timeline of other allegations of past misconduct made by the security guard in his last profession and while employed at the hotel. The filing asserts that the hotel did not complete due diligence during the hiring process and that management did not take appropriate actions after the guard had inappropriate interactions with hotel guests. This resulted in Rob having his altercation that caused him to lose business. Paragraph 43 is important for us to remember later. Prior to the August 2023 incident, O'Neill has been interviewed on CNN, CBS, Fox News, Newsmax, and other sites, and was invited to be a guest on countless podcasts. O'Neill also participated in frequent paid speaking engagements and public appearances. However, after the August 2023 incident and the defendant's actions, O'Neill's speaking engagements dissipated, book sales slowed, revenue was lost, and his business, RJO Apparel, has been destroyed. Another paragraph that's important for future context is 94. Prior to the August 2023 incident, O'Neill and RJO had specific speaking engagements scheduled. But following the incident and false claims that O'Neill had assaulted the security guard and called him the N-word, those specific speaking engagements were canceled and O'Neill and RJO lost income. I do think it's safe to assume that companies would be less likely to hire him after this altercation due to the nature of the event. And to be clear, if that security guard did lie about what Rob said and about him assaulting him, then a lawsuit is warranted. There were other interesting points I noticed in the filing, but they aren't relevant to this topic, so we'll stick with what we need for the future. Rob would go on to Fox News and discuss the lawsuit.
Businesses have basically gone to zero, and that's public appearances and speaking. That's my apparel business, RJO Apparel. In my podcast, I still get some good views of my podcast because I'm open about post-traumatic stress and things like that. But just because of an allegation like this, as we've seen, even if it was true, obviously, but even it doesn't need to be true for people to stop if someone's going to hire me for a speaking event about leadership or effective communication or about military, like I do, and they do their due diligence, trying to do a little research on me, and this nonsense article comes up, you can see where they might sway. And I've lost a ton of business. I went, there was a point in my career where I was giving 300 speeches in 1 year, between 250 and 300 speeches in that many cities in a year. And now it's just dried up because this is a bad look that didn't happen.
It's crazy to think at his height he was doing between 250 and 300 speeches a year. There are two sites where we can see that his price range is $29,000 to $50,000. So let's just say 250 speeches at $29,000. That'd be $7 million. I don't think the price is that high, but even if it was half of that for 1 year, that's more than the average American earns in a lifetime. But it's crazy to think about that and to put in perspective how much money is involved with this story. Another podcast where a clip caught my attention was from the Dale Brigsby podcast.
Man and I, the guy that was in front of me, we pull each other aside because he wanted to say like, where was everyone? I'm like, just thin, bro. We were just thin going up
Was
the
he
stairs.
the same one that he wasn't the same one that shot Khalid?
It was between him and one other dude. I couldn't tell which dude it was. They were both there and they're both badasses.
And you don't know.
It's strange how now it's between two people. Unfortunately, Rob would make headlines again for negative reasons at the beginning of November. He would respond to a post from a liberal political commentator called Harry Sisson on Twitter. Harry posted a picture of him and some other guys saying they were proudly voting for Kamala. Rob would respond with, "You're not men, you're boys. If there was no social media, you'd be my concubines." While there'd be plenty of comments not in Rob's favor from this post, closing out 2024, Rob would go on Vlad TV. Rob would go on there and share his story. But Vlad would question him about the Mark Owens version, and Rob would respond a little more directly than he had done in the past.
Because it was multiple wives and a bunch of children, basically.
Yes, I wasn't in that house there. I don't know what happened there. I know the two guys who were involved. And the one guy who you don't know who he is, when his story comes out, you'll realize once again that Mark Owen's not telling the truth.
Like somewhere in the shoulder, so he ended up getting a Purple Heart.
Yeah, the only Purple Heart on the mission. Yeah, pretty convenient, the only Purple Heart, and then you write an illegal book.
So did he get a Purple Heart?
Yeah, put himself in for it.
We all carry explosive charges. I pulled one off, got on my knee, and started setting it. And right as I was attaching it, a round started coming through the door at us.
Somebody started shooting at you from inside the house, and the bullets were coming through the door.
Yep. Immediately, my buddy who was standing up started returning fire. I kind of rolled away from the door, blindly returned fire back through. You couldn't see what was on the other side, and then it went quiet. Yeah, I just got a little piece of frag in my shoulder from some of the rounds that came through. It really wasn't a major wound at all, but I carry a set of bolt cutters to cut locks with. When I got back, I was checking my gears, any holes or anything, and I pull out the bolt cutters, and I've got the bullet stuck in the handle. So the bullet just missed me by a little bit. The handle stick up either side of my head.
Right by your neck. But you don't consider that to be a big deal?
No, plenty of other guys have suffered much worse.
It is rather off-putting that Rob seems irritated that Bissonnette received a Purple Heart from shrapnel in his neck. But right after that Purple Heart comment, Rob says something interesting about the AAR or after action report.
Anyone else get a Purple Heart?
As far as I know, at our first debrief around Bin Laden's body with McCraven, everyone's here, no one's hurt. Here's Bin Laden. This guy killed him. That's what went down. I don't know. You'd have to ask him these questions, man. I don't know what.
Have you ever had?
Then Rob brings up Bissonnette emailing him about what happened in the room, which he alluded to in the interview previously with Cubbler.
With him after.
I did a little bit when he asked me. He asked me what happened in the room when I killed Bin Laden, and I sent him an email. I have to find it. I told him what happened in there. He wasn't. He I don't know where he. Look, the guy's a great operator. I don't know what he came up with.
Vlad did by far the most research for a large platform, from bringing up the Intercept article to the Esquire interview. I highly recommend watching the whole interview. But the last point to bring up is when Antihero's mentioned.
Right. There's also a podcast called the Antihero Podcast. They did a whole thing on you claiming there's a bunch of inconsistencies in your stories.
They're trying to get famous by bad-mouthing people who actually went to war.
Yeah.
Well, Rob would say he doesn't care. I wish that were true.
What happened? You don't believe it? I'm not you. I'm saying if someone doesn't believe it, fine. And if people on the mission don't believe it, fine. And if Antihero, I don't care. Well, I responded to them just because it was like amusing. I had to tweet at them like, you guys don't even know me. Who are you?
Well,
unfortunately, we now know that was not the case. Starting 2025, Rob would catch the attention of military audiences again for a tweet that he would ultimately delete. Do you really want me to tell Red's story? I'll tell it. I kept the MF out of prison. I'll tell it. To my knowledge, Rob deleted his tweet and never spoke about it or gave any context to its meaning. The same day Rob would make this tweet, Valhalla VFT and Jake Zelig would go on stream where Jake would say this.
Alive, all this stuff. The reports I got 5 weeks after the shit happened, I was on Top Shot when it happened. As soon as I came off of Top Shot, I had a bunch of phone messages in my phone. I knew who killed him. Okay. I knew how he got killed. I knew that his body was basically like Swiss cheese because they had shot.
And was that definitely Rob O'Neill that killed him?
It was 100% not Rob O'Neill. Okay. But
don't clip that, everybody.
Here's where everybody gets away with it, Nate. Everybody on the mission shot him.
Jake was an officer and SEAL teammate in the Navy. Jake would also share an interesting tidbit that I hadn't heard before.
Everybody. Now, this is the thing I did not know, but totally makes sense. I did not know that Delta was there with him.
Jake would share that Delta helped with the training process and gear, and that's why they were on the mission. Jake would then share this about Red's identity.
My 2 cents, he got killed there. He got killed by a dude that's still at DEVGRU right now. That is, I know a lot of people are going to hate to hear this. He is an officer. Okay. I know y'all don't want to hear that, but like an officer actually shot him somehow. And he's still at Damn Neck. He's been over there for a while. So
supposedly Red was an officer and is still in DEVGRU. Looking back at what Matt Cubbler said, he believed that he was either in the CIA or FBI, but didn't say anything about his rank. On Rob's Operator podcast called Sign Here, Mr. Madison, which was released on September 17th, Rob would indirectly talk about the Antihero Podcast.
A little bit and the other stuff too. I was talking about the veteran stuff too. I'm not going to mention these ass blaster veterans podcasts that have been out there talking shit about every veteran who's actually done something.
after the military. I don't mean actually done something, but have done stuff that has gotten some veterans into the spotlight, into the limelight, myself included, and they tried to make livings off of themselves by bashing other people. Because it's kind of weird when people just talk about what other people did and how bad they are, as opposed to saying what you did. And that's very shady with your records and what you've done. And I'll tell you this, as someone who's been in the spotlight for a while now too, if you're going to try to get famous and try to get clicks and do your little dances and sit around with your fucking retard friends that wear sunglasses in studio, shit like that, smoking cigars and drinking, better fucking make sure your house is clean. You better make sure your history is correct before you start fucking with other people, because there's a podcast out there, I don't know if you know it, just disbanded. You've probably heard a little bit. You've probably heard a little bit. If you do a little digging, and you probably know who I'm talking about. They're going away a little bit.
I don't think I've ever seen Rob say the Antihero Podcast by name, or Brent or Tyler, but we all know who he's talking about. He would then imply more was coming out, specifically about Brent after Tyler's controversy.
It was found. I'm not saying who found it. I'm saying some stuff was found. I might be hinting there's a shitload more stuff out there too. That right now they're just kind of keying on one member. Be careful who you fuck with. Be careful with when dealing with people who have been in this light before. You know, it's that cute little fucking rug you have under your cute little feet, or you're probably the type of guy who still wears combat boots with his jeans. It might get pulled out from under you too, and you know who I'm talking about. And I hope you're fucking listening. And it's not just podcasts; it's other YouTubers, you famous little fuckers that started your war well after the rest of us killed the terrorists.
The next day, the Antihero Podcast would post that Brent and them would be parting ways. Brent would move on to create the Tier 1 podcast, and Tyler would continue co-hosting Antihero. On November 11th, the Sean Ryan Show would post a trailer called SEAL Team 6 Operator Who Shot the World's Most Wanted Man official preview. The thumbnail would say Navy SEAL Who Shot Bin Laden. This would obviously be a very anticipated video with the questions and controversy surrounding Rob. Sean would post a full episode called Matt Bissonnette, SEAL Team 6 Operator Exposes Admiral McRaven, Obama, and Leon Panetti, with the basic Sean thumbnail format. The first point when Rob is mentioned is when Sean asked why he didn't come out like Rob did.
Famous SEALs come out, about this raid, Rob O'Neill, everybody knows. I'm just curious, why did you decide to conceal yourself?
Bissonnette wouldn't say anything about Rob. Later, Bissonnette would state again that the point man was the same for Khalid and UBL.
Moving up to the third deck.
Third floor, point man in front of me again.
Same guy.
Same guy whispered Khalid. Head pops out the door at the top. Point man takes a couple shots and the head disappears into the room.
Bissonnette would go on to finish telling his story about entering the room with other SEALs and putting rounds into him as he was down. Sean would ask how it made him feel, but there are no follow-up questions. Remember, Sean interviewed Rob a few years ago, and to this day, it's still his fourth highest viewed video. You can make the argument that it's so long ago that Sean might not remember that Rob claimed a different story, but Sean and Rob have made content together for years. So I'd be shocked if there hasn't been any off-camera conversations about the topic over the years to imprint just enough for Sean to recall any discrepancies between the two stories. Long story short, this interview was a big letdown as far as providing any clarity, but it did reopen the debate of who did what for the mainstream. The same day that interview was released, Rob would file his defamation lawsuit against the Antihero and Tier 1 YouTube channels. Rob would post a statement about the lawsuit. The morning of November 10th, 2025, I filed a defamation lawsuit against the Antihero Podcast, LLC, doing business as antiheropodcast.com, and Brent Tucker, and Tyler Hoover, and James Arnett, and Countercultural Inc., and Tango 6 LLC, doing business as tier1podcast.com. For years, I've watched them slander not only me, but others who have served our country honorably. I've reached my limit. I've always been honest about my service, especially my role in killing Osama Bin Laden. I want to thank my teammates and Admiral Bill McRaven for standing up for honesty and integrity. I am forever grateful to my brothers in arms and standing up for the truth. In point of fact, this lawsuit is not only to defend myself against untrue and unfounded accusations of stolen valor, but to also put an end to vet-on-vet hate. These individuals have found a way to profit from tearing down the same community they swore to protect. The days of veterans trashing other veterans online for attention, clicks, and money are over. I will not allow their malicious intent to hide behind words like truth and accountability while profiting off their own lies and division. Veterans need to be supporting each other, not finding joy in destroying one another. There are many foundations dedicated to supporting veterans' mental health and ending post-traumatic stress or more. Financial gains from this lawsuit will be used to help veterans with PTSD go through ibogaine treatment and get the mental help our community so desperately needs. Sincerely, former Senior Chief Petty Officer, SEAL Robert J. O'Neill. There would be criticism directed at Rob for the timing of releasing his lawsuit, since he decided to launch the lawsuit the day before Veterans Day. The lawsuit is very lengthy, but there are some key details we'll be pulling out. Paragraph 25. To the extent defendants rely on the thin read of Matt Bissonnette's book, No Easy Day, which was actually written under a pen name and which diverges from the actual account given by Admiral McRaven and by O'Neill, it warrants knowing that even a rudimentary due diligence would suggest such a reliance is misplaced. For instance, a book review authored by Australian Army Lieutenant Jacob Chow, which is still available online, notes that No Easy Day is one of the main stories told in the aftermath of the manhunt for Osama Bin Laden. Rather than delivering a full dissection of the raid to kill Bin Laden, readers seeking a memoir detailing the tactics of the Bin Laden raid may be disappointed to find that the author confirms what the media previously reported. The author has been identified as one of the 3 assaulters who were on the first floor to see the dead Bin Laden. However, his account has recently criticized by some of his teammates and a number of Pentagon officials. The New York Times book review published on October 19th, 2020 stated in part that No Easy Day amounts to a cinematic account of the raid to kill Bin Laden. Paragraph 26. This cinematic account was never cleared with the Department of Defense, and ultimately Bissonnette was required to give the U.S. government all profits and royalties from the book or any movie right as a result of the violation of the non-disclosure agreements. Yet Hoover and Tucker somehow conclude that O'Neill's account was too cinematic. Indeed, insofar as No Easy Day was deceptively written under a pen name, arguably it also should have been seen, at least initially at first blush, as more of a sensational historical novel than a reliable work of non-fiction. Paragraph 27. In summary, given that Bissonnette originally wrote under a pseudonym, that appears to be insufficient grounds for challenging O'Neill's credibility without more. It certainly does not justify accusing the highly decorated O'Neill of dishonesty, particularly when his account is corroborated by Mission Commander Admiral McRaven. These paragraphs stood out to me. First, because I don't understand why an Australian lieutenant's review would be so pivotal for the case to be quoted. Second, referring to Bissonnette's book as a sensational historical novel instead of a reliable work of nonfiction was an interesting call out to Bissonnette. Next, I want to look at paragraph 76. Pointedly, their podcast masquerades as if it has undertaken an investigative review, yet made no immediate or serious attempts to reach out to O'Neill for comment occurred before their libelous and running commentary. Not only did the Antihero Podcast not round out their coverage with a request for comment from the U.S. Navy or from Admiral McRaven or from other team members like Will Chancey or Blank, but they also omitted any reference to the Admiral's public statements, confirming that O'Neill deserved the credit for shooting Bin Laden, thereby establishing a malicious disregard for the truth and intent to discredit and pillory O'Neill. First, in the initial episode that Brent did on Antihero, he did reference McRaven twice.
He'll come out and argue and say, yeah, well, the Craven, backed it up. And I put it to, my book was approved by DOD, those things that he worked for. They PNG'd him. The only thing they're looking at a DOD level is revealing top secret information. They're not going through and validating the story. They're just looking for specific things. And I forget what was McRaven or whatever high official that he's going to come and say, well, he validated my story. Generals and admirals know the least about what's happening on the ground.
Second, it's strange to me that they were supposed to cite a redacted source. But hey, I'm very ignorant to court proceedings, so maybe it isn't taboo. Finally, in paragraph 84, it stated what Brent and Tyler's accusations have caused Rob. As a natural and foreseeable consequence of defendant's actions, O'Neill's goodwill, commercial value, and personal brand have been substantially and irreparably damaged. At the end of the lawsuit, we see that Rob is looking for $25 million from the defendants. There are a few exhibits that we need to go over. The first is from Admiral McRaven. The Navy SEALs commander in charge of the mission at the compound, who is Rob O'Neill's boss, took me over to Rob O'Neill and said, "Admiral, this is the man who killed Osama Bin Laden." I immediately thanked Rob and told him his life was about to change forever. I don't recall that story being told that way before. It's strange to me that a fellow SEAL would anticipate that word would get out, but he is a former admiral, so his statement does carry a lot of weight, witness or not to the event. The next statement in support of Rob is from Will Chancey, the author of No Ordinary Dog. While conducting a search of a room on the second floor, Chief Pay Officer entered and stated directly, "I'm pretty sure I shot that motherfucker in the face," referring to Bin Laden. I was stunned and said, "What? Seriously?" Rob nodded. Admiral McRaven stated, "I want to shake the hand of the man who shot him," and the team affirmed Rob O'Neill was that man. Admiral McRaven then shook his hand. His actions during the mission were acknowledged during the follow-on debriefs at Bagram Airfield and in smaller discussions on the return trip. In these reviews, it is consistently recognized that Chief Pay Officer Robert J. O'Neill had fired the shots that eliminated Osama Bin Laden. Will's statement is very consistent with what he wrote in the book and the admirals. The third exhibit is from a redacted party. After the mission, he was on a helicopter leaving the compound and had this interaction. I asked him who shot him, and he said he had done the deed, then recounted the actions on target as they were fresh in his mind. He would go on to echo the previous points about McRaven shaking Rob's hand in the small debrief groups confirming Rob. The next statement is from another party that was a SEAL Team 6 operator, but it just mentions his impressions of Rob's character, but there's no specific mentions about the raid for UBL. There would be 6 more statements from fellow SEALs and service members confirming that Rob's story had been consistent and that he is a man of high character. In summary, aside from the pilots and the interpreter, there are 23 SEALs on the Neptune Spear mission. The commander, Admiral McRaven, provided a statement in support of Rob. Will Chensey, another DEVGRU operator, and a third redacted party wrote a statement in support. I wish we had statements from someone that actually made it to the 3rd floor like Bissonnette and Rob, but who knows what will come out in the future. 2 days later, Rob would go on his podcast and release an episode.
And I'm gonna close a little bit with this. I did file a lawsuit this week too against a podcast that has been out. You can read it. It's on my Instagram at Mikuya. It'll probably be on the Operator Podcast. I'm not going to mention them right now. I don't like saying their name, but there will be more about it. I don't want to touch on it too much. It's just it's a shame that it has to come to this. And I just want you to know the lawsuit doesn't make me happy. They're expensive and lawyers are involved, and it's just not great. But that's out there too. And
Rob didn't share any specifics, just implied that Antihero was doing Bissonnette's dirty work. The next day, Brent and Tyler would respond to the lawsuit.
Everything about him. Rob O'Neill hit me with a $25 million defamation lawsuit.
We're being sued by Rob O'Neill.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
I haven't been served.
I actually just want to put allegedly.
Brent would share his strategy very openly on his episode.
I was told one of my options is, hey, we can probably get this dismissed real easy. So if you want to move to dismiss it, I'm just going to put my cards on the table and tell you what I'm doing. And I said, no, we're not going to. I'm absolutely not going to move to dismiss this, because to move to dismiss this would be like, I don't want to go to court. I'm scared of court. I don't have the truth on my side. So that got squashed real quick. We're not going to dismiss this. And if you asked me how this is going to play out, this is a publicity stunt, and Rob is not going to take this to court. And mark my words, only 2 things can happen. Rob will either find out he's made a huge mistake and not let this go to court, and this little publicity stunt to make sure Matt Bissonnette is not heard is over for him, and he will not take this. He will not take it to court, or it's going to go to court and you're going to lose. So either way, it's fine by me. Got a lot of people calling me like, "Hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay?" I'm fine by this. This is in a weird way, it's one of the best things that could have happened.
Brent would go on to share that the people that had informed him about the discrepancies had contacted him and were ready to support him in court. I think Tyler summarized the situation in a pretty appropriate way.
Rob O'Neill, you are the only one that cares about this in 2025. You did the impossible. You played the long game. It was old news, November 9th. No one in the country cared if you fired a shot and the impact of that round. No one cared. You brought this back up. And I don't understand why you care about who killed Osama bin Laden more than anyone in the world. But to quote the great Pat McAfee, people are asking what our lawyers are saying about this. We don't got them.
We ain't got it. So.
Before we go into my analysis and summary of this, I want to share why I made this video. I had gotten a couple comments in the past asking me to look at this situation, and I did. I initially watched the Antihero episode, and then I watched a Sean Ryan interview, and I think I watched one other interview besides that. But I thought it was just going to boil down to a he said, she said situation. But after the lawsuit was filed, I wanted to dig deeper and see if there's something else that needed to be uncovered. Rob is probably the most successful veteran from the global war on terrorism in terms of monetizing his career. And I would argue that the Osama Bin Laden raid isn't even in his top 5 most interesting stories. Whether Rob was the one that actually fired the shots that eliminated UBL or not, his career was amazing and inspiring. From potentially earning millions from public speaking, to hanging out with celebrities, flying on private jets, and living the good life, he had an amazing run that should have been fulfilling. And assuming that his story is factual, I can't understand the resentment and anger he has towards Brent and Tyler. But I cannot stand for him trying to create a culture of veterans suing veterans for saying things they don't like. Besides the veteran aspect, trying to create censorship and case law that will set precedents for YouTube doesn't sit right with me. You can argue that it's because of the slander, and it's appropriate because he could have lost business due to this. But it was claimed in the first lawsuit that he had speaking engagements and his merch company was still doing well until the incident in Texas that made his speaking engagements be canceled and his merch sales slow down. We have to remember that these accusations that Rob wasn't the man that shot UBL first started in 2017. So why not sue reporters like Matt Cole or Seaman Hirsch because they're not veterans and you're trying to end veteran on veteran hate? Matt Cubbler is a veteran, Andy Stump and Jake Zewig are SEALs. Why not sue Bissonnette too for stealing potential revenues from plagiarizing and falsifying your story? I imagine the last justification someone might make in support of Rob is that Antihero's social media reach makes him more detrimental than other channels stating their opinions, or Matt Cole writing it in an actual book. Well, there is another individual being sued in this lawsuit. The unlucky individual's name is Jimmy Arnett from the Counterculture Podcast. The following clips are in the lawsuit.
Expensive.
This comment. This looks interesting. Ballbuster 601.
That's him. That's him. That's Rob.
Yes. Imagine talking shit about SAW. It's SOF, right? S Special Operations Forces.
Yeah, stop. Yeah.
But then doing a show talking about it, and Kevin, is that the official position from a senior non-commissioned officer laughing about who died more? I'm not laughing about anyone who died more. So. You know who says like the most critical bullshit comments are people who don't actually show their real names. So
yeah,
like
Rob. That's Rob O'Neill. That's Rob O'Neill. By the way,
Buster, send me a link on my Instagram. You can come on right now. No,
right
bullshit.
now.
Right now, come on. Send me a link.
Come on, bro. I'll say it to your fucking face, Rob.
He won't. Comment your email address. I will send you a link. You can come on here right now.
He won't. Guarantee he won't. Guarantee he won't.
It's literally in his name. It's literally in his name. Buster.
Baller Buster. If you're really the Baller Buster.
That comment right there, and then the comment that I made afterwards.
Yeah.
That Rob O'Neill got on his burner account. We know it was him. By the way, Rob, if you're watching, IP addresses, I know how to do those too. Just so you know, bro, like I can tell if you're coming from the same device and it's two different social media accounts, but it's both coming from the same IP address. You could see that easily. It's embedded in the code. It's fucking easy, dude. You're an idiot.
Did you happen to notice that video has less than 200 views? Come on, man. Yeah, if that's a lie, shame on him. But at least for me, that makes us feel like a personal vendetta. You're going to sue a channel getting less than 200 views, but when CNN comes out and says they have sources that say that it was actually Red that did the deed and not you, I guess they're off limits. And $25 million? That just feels like you're trying to ruin someone's life. It turns my stomach that's the culture that's trying to be created right now. I know that there will be people asking why I didn't dissect Bissonnette in this video as well. I do believe that Bissonnette also deserves criticism and also fabricate aspects of his story. But his punishment for what I know seems like it's disproportionate to what he's been accused of. But he also isn't suing people for $25 million. There are a lot of things I want to include in this video, but I believe this is what's needed for context to the stolen valor accusations and the lawsuit controversies. Overall, my impression of Rob is he's an American warrior that deserves respect for what he's accomplished in the military. He does come off to me as a little narcissistic and emotional, but he's a funny guy that speaks his mind. Do I think he's the first person to shoot Bin Laden? No. 2 reasons. First, the concept of the point man missing shots of the shadowy figure combined with Amal's story just don't add up to me, compared to other accountings that seem much more plausible. Second, out of the 23 SEALs that were on the mission, only 2 provide statements for him for a very public lawsuit. Veterans care about honor and supporting their teammates, so I can't imagine the majority of the team hanging him out to dry if the accounting was mostly factual about Bin Laden. However, based on the available evidence, Who do I think will win the lawsuit in regards to if Rob's story is factual or not, assuming no other variables are injected? I think Rob has a hard evidence on his side. With the commander of the mission supporting statement and 2 other team members supporting statements, all primary sources of information are on Rob's side. As far as my research, I couldn't find even a quote from Bissonnette directly saying Rob is lying. Unfortunately, Matt Cool and Matt Cubbler's statements aren't first-hand pieces of information. So unless other team members who were on the mission who allegedly speak through people like Brent or the Matts come forward, it can't be used unless they're subpoenaed like Brent said. I can be sympathetic to the SEAL Team 6 operators being in a tough spot. They're supposed to be silent professionals and don't want to involve themselves. But if you did use Brent as a megaphone to share your grievances about Rob's story, I hope you have the intestinal fortitude to do the right thing, come forward to support them in the lawsuit. As far as the damages go, we know I'm not a law professional, but I don't think Antihero had a significant effect on Rob's earning potential. Again, the information was already out that Rob might not be the shooter. He was still earning business. I think Rob's decline is due to several factors. First, the story's been told for over a decade, and the war is over, so there is inherently less interest in military stories. Yes, he talks about leadership principles, but that isn't a unique attribute for him to be paid to speak about. Next, his arrest headlines. The first few times it was swept under the rug, but the final one in Texas captured a lot of attention. Again, if we had to point to a singular moment that affected Rob as a brand, as mentioned in the first lawsuit, it was that incident. But by far the most important reason Rob has seen a decline is his online interactions. Him making controversial tweets or statements has had a tremendous negative effect on his brand. Companies don't want to hire someone that calls people pussies or concubines or differences in politics to speak to their employees. Yes, it's 100% your right to share your opinion, as is to deal with the controversies of being a public figure when you get put under a magnifying glass. No matter how this case turns out, Rob will always have an audience. Like I said, even with the controversy surrounding his brand, he continues to captivate audiences with his stories. Bin Laden or not, he has a lot to potentially give. From the business side, he is still doing well. I saw this post from August 31st where he says he's selling 15 of the prints a day. Or this post from December 3rd where he's selling 300, 400 autographed books a month. Aside from that, he's still doing his work with psychedelics to help address PTSD for veterans. I've seen he also does charity work. I hope he can focus more on these positives rather than fighting losing battles on the internet. Rob, if you're seeing this, I want to share this with you. Don't let this be your legacy and what you're remembered for. No matter what the truth is, people are going to believe whatever they want. You've reached levels as a professional and as an entrepreneur most can only dream about. You have your family, you have your success, you have your story. Make yourself the example that you want to be perceived as. Frankly, I don't care if we ever get definitive proof of what happened on the 3rd floor. But Rob, I hope you drop this lawsuit and you just let this be a speed bump in your story. I'm going to end this video with a clip that I hope is applied to this situation.
The big one too, especially we were talking about today with the social media, the negativity, the way people like to think and the kind of getting that thing, screwing up. You're going to fall down.
Yep.
Get up. You know, why did I fail? Look yourself in the mirror and own it. When you screw something up, fix it. And the best advice I give people is get over it.
Fast.
Get over it.
Yeah.
That's it.